That's the other volume.
Yeah.
Hello, hello?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
Sorry for that inconvenience. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Agustin Gonzalez. I'm here with Ali Tija. We're both managing directors of this year's MIT Climate and Energy Prize. I do want to take a few minutes to kind of run you through what MIT CEP is and how we got to where we are today. So first of all, CEP started as the MIT Energy Prize, Clean Energy Prize, sorry, in 2008. It started out it's the brainchild of Todd Hines and Bill Olet, two faculty at MIT. And they identified that there was, a need to scale up tough tech ventures, to begin addressing climate change. This, remember, was way back in 2008 after the first CleanTech 1.0. And after 15 years, I'm glad to say that we have evolved the prize to kind of broaden the scope. Now it's called the MIT Climate and Energy Prize. Luckily enough, we got to keep the same acronym, MIT CEP. And over the past 15 years, we've had 750 teams participate, from which 260 have gotten mentorship from our network of industry experts. And the teams that have participated have gotten in non-dilutive funding 3.3 million, which that sounds like a big number, but when you see what these same companies have gone on, over 50% of our alumni are still active today, and they have gone on to raise over $1.7 billion in follow-on funding. So we're very proud of this impact, and we're hoping that the teams that are going to be pitching here today are going to become part of that cohort and are going to keep on pushing that impact of climate change that we really, really need. Before we kick off with our pitches, I want to just thank our sponsors, our judges, our mentors, and all of the CEP team that has made this possible. So without further ado, I officially kick off the US semifinal of the MIT Climate and Energy Prize 2023. I'm going to pass the mic now to Alejandro, our VP of judging, to introduce our panel of judges. Thank you, Ale.
All right, so let's get down to business, to what we came here to do. Let's see who's going to make it to the grand final at the engine. And to do this, we couldn't have asked for a better panel of judges who will have to do this a very hard job. And I'd like to first thank them all for their time, for being here, for volunteering their time. That's a thank you that comes from the CEP team as well as from the participants. And I'd like to introduce the first judge, Ben Saltoff. Ben is an entrepreneur in residence and ecosystem builder at the Martin Trust Center at MIT, where he's helped students grow their own environmental-related startups. Next up is Dr. Michael Campos, who is an investor at Energy Impact Partners, and where he focuses on scaling revolutionary climate tech companies in order to transition our world to net zero. His experience spans across venture capital, government funding, and applied research. Then we have Catherine St. James. Katie is a senior director of programs here at Greentown Labs, where she leads the Greentown Go initiative, which is a program that accelerates the relationship between startups and corporate partners. Then we have Dr. Michael Kearney. Michael is a partner at The Engine, which is a tough tech venture capital firm affiliated with MIT. There he sits on the board of many revolutionary climate tech companies. Last but not least, we have Shayla Campbell, she is a director at EY Parthenon in the strategy and transactions practice. She has been closely involved with the firm's ESG and sustainability strategy. And with that, I'd like to kick it off here to Chandler, who's going to tell us about how this process is going to work.
All right, we're ready. And we want to make sure that everyone got a chance to speak today before we hear from our talented entrepreneurs. So the way this is going to work today, we're going to have 10 teams pitching in person. There's going to be 5 teams, followed by a brief coffee break. and then following up with the final 5 teams. Each team will have 8 minutes to present, followed by 6 minutes of Q&A. Each team is responsible for conducting that Q&A, so don't wait for anyone to speak up. Make sure that you're proactively calling on the judges as they raise their hand to ask questions. We will be having an Audience Choice Award later in the competition. So after every team has presented, we'll display a link to vote for your favorite team today. This link will be shared both here as well as with the live stream. So if you have friends or family that can't make it in the room today, make sure that they are tuned into the live stream. That way they can vote for your team. And then, yeah, that's it. So without further ado, why don't we get started, huh? All right. So first team from Chicago, Illinois. They are sourcing insights to fight wildfires. This is Inferno Guard.
Hey everyone, we're so excited to be here today. My name is Kevin Casper.
And I'm Nandita Balaji.
We're the co-founders of Inferno Guard, and we've been working together for over 10 years. 6 of those focused on helping landowners manage wildfire threats. This is a picture of Nandita and I working together for the first time at a Science Olympiad competition when we were 11 years old. Since then, we entered multiple STEM competitions throughout middle and high school. And during that time, we were able to work together as a team and continue moving things forward. Back in 2016, after experiencing the harmful effects of wildfires near the Appalachian Mountains, where we're originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, we decided to start tackling the megafire crisis. We actually started by building a sensor-based hardware solution to monitor wildfire threats and notify landowners in remote environments. Dozens of prototypes and 2 patents later, we talked to over 200 landowners and industry experts, helping us craft a deep understanding of the wildfire industry. But when we attended a wildfire trade show in November of 2022, we realized that hardware companies face one critical problem. How do you monitor and deploy devices, thousands of them, across remote locations? Our team had actually already solved this problem because we realized that deployment density must be unique for every landowner because of topography and environmental conditions. So we already had an internal team building what we called a wildfire risk assessment, which was used to identify how many devices and where those devices needed to be deployed across any given property. The same mathematical models used for wildfire detection can also be applied to the wildfire management space, which is critically important but often overlooked in the industry. In fact, large-scale landowners have continuously inefficiently invested in wildfire mitigation practices, like reducing fuel loads and clearing areas of unwanted vegetation, even though it's scientifically proven to reduce wildfire risk. The reason for doing so is because they have no technological tools in place to manage forest health. Even wildfire specialists have admitted that their tactics for mitigation are, quote, bubblegum, boots on the ground, and duct tape. So what we decided to do was pivot Inferno Guard from that detection solution to hyper-focus on wildfire risk analysis because of its burning industry need. Using our existing technology, we formed the basis for Inferno Guard's new vision: to connect the wildfire industry and educate landowners about wildfire management across their property.
And Inferno Guard's vision can best be understood through an example of one of our customers, Corey Bigman, longtime forester at Collins Co. Lumber, who just last August watched his livelihood, an estimated $100 million in revenue, burned to the ground because of one uncontrolled fire. But just 1 week prior, Corey assured me that their existing land management practices would 100% protect them from wildfires. But his story is not unique. For landowners who own vast unmonitored acres, wildfires can go undetected for days. In fact, wildfires can go undetected for days. And in fact, private revenue-generating landowners feel the worst impacts from this because they rely on their land for business. Especially in the forestry industry, Due to the natural harvesting cycle of timber, one wildfire can wipe out almost 40 years of labor and investment. And the path to wildfire management lies in early investment into mitigation tactics year-round. But wildfire management is overwhelming. How can a landowner possibly monitor every acre of their property? To do this right, you need to analyze all 100,000 acres, identify high-risk areas, select the proper fuel reduction strategy, and implement these mitigation tactics before wildfire season every year. But with no technological tools in place and mitigation specialists aimlessly roaming one's property to identify these, landowners like Corey are left desperate to better understand risk on their land. But that's what InfernoGuard does. InfernoGuard provides precision wildfire risk mapping software directly to landowners. And here's how it works. Users will log onto our web app, upload their coordinates, sign our service and liability agreement, make a payment based on property size, and receive a notification when their assessment is ready for review. The product itself analyzes millions of historic wildfire data points and considers 11 different environmental and topographical factors, ranging from vegetation to moisture indices to even the slope of your property. And this tool analyzes risk with a precision down to the 10th of an acre, providing landowners with insights on a per parcel basis to drive strategic and intentional land management decisions. And with this assessment, mitigation companies no longer need to travel on site to analyze risk on a landowner's property, but instead will use our software to select and implement mitigation tactics on Corey's property. Plus, as sensor-based detection companies enter the market in the coming months, we're excited to work with these companies no longer as competitors, but as our partners. We are developing the only tool in the industry aimed strategically to inform detection deployment strategy in specific locations for hardware devices. And this ensures a 10 times reduction in deployment costs for landowners, ensuring feasibility of detection solutions in the long term. Our revenue is priced at $1,000 base price plus an additional 5 cents per acre. And we've already made our first sale, so we're confident that this pricing model is scalable in the timber industry. This summer, landowners will be able to purchase an annual subscription at a discounted rate, receiving 3 assessments per year to ensure maximal insights for landowners with seasonal variability. Additionally, in addition to direct sales, we're excited to partner and form strategic partnerships to ensure significant revenue share on deal flow. And we're excited to continue having conversations to secure exclusive partnership deals as we scale this summer.
Widespread adoption of InfernoGuard's technology could reduce wildfire-related emissions, including 4.9% of global CO2 released. And in West Coast states, they contribute up to 30% of emissions. We're equally committed to helping sequester an additional 1.2 million tons of carbon dioxide across timber companies in the US annually each year. Our team is deeply passionate about wildfire climate solutions, and we've developed a team of students and advisors, including the Chief of Fire at Yosemite National Park, to propel our work forward. The $100,000 MIT Climate and Energy Prize would be a timely injection of funds to propel InfernoGuard forward. In order to meet the demands of climate change, we must rapidly invest in our team and continue product development. We're already anticipating 6 sales by June 1st, and we hope to accumulate nearly $20,000 in revenue. So please, join us in taking the guesswork out of wildfire preparedness and reducing the anticipated 1.8 billion tons of carbon emitted this wildfire season. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'll go first as the microphone is right next to me. Could you tell us a little bit more about your pathway to market? You mentioned you have this goal of 6 sales by June 1st. Are those 6 different customers, and how do you plan to acquire customers within online?
Definitely. So over the 6 years that we've been working in the timber space, we know exactly how to reach them. It's honestly through direct cold calls. So we're pursuing direct sales, starting with the alpha product that we're launching next month. So that's going to be cold calls. We have a sales cycle that we've been using. We have some timber companies we already are working with, so they're going to use some referrals to get that process started. And then from there, those partnerships we think are really important. We already have 3 warm leads with mitigation companies and 2 warm leads with hardware companies, setting up demos with them and trying to start forming those partnerships as well, because we really think that that's the best way to integrate our software into the industry itself and really finding a way to find education in the beginning and then use that to inform those partnerships coming along in the future.
Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit more about the output of your analysis as well as the output of some of the partners who are providing these mitigation recommendations?
Yeah, exactly. So we have 11 factors that we look at. So there's environmental conditions and topographical conditions. What we do is we output hexagons, basically, that identify down to the 10th of an acre, the top 5 most important risk factors, ranked in order of importance and why. And then they can use that information as insights towards the mitigation plans. But when we're working with these mitigation partners, we've already started to identify which specific factors are most important to create a custom plan for them about wildfire mitigation plans. So there's difference about like wildfire risk versus a wildfire mitigation plan versus a wildfire deployment strategy. So we're going to create unique maps for each of those use cases with the variables that we're collecting right now.
Can you talk a bit about the $1,000 per customer fee and how you came to that pricing strategy?
Yeah, of course. So the biggest way that we came to this pricing strategy was honestly through market feedback and talking to a bunch of customers. In the 7 years that we've been working on this project, we've had the opportunity to build some really strong relationships with our partners in the industry. So we kind of came across that number just from speaking to a bunch of landowners, interviewing them about their willingness to pay, and this was the initial base price that we thought was the best combination of that.
We also were able to kind of work alongside them and create a strategy based off of the amount that they spend on mitigation each year, also the amount that they're willing to spend on detection solutions, and kind of backtrack it from there to price it accurately, especially having multiple assessments per year so that they can see how the risk is changing from year to year.
I'm Michael Gambush from Energy Impact Partners. Nice presentation. I love this area. It's right at the intersection of climate change mitigation and adaptation. I think we're going to need to do a lot more at that intersection. Now, this business has a drawback of being seasonal. So one common strategy in the ag tech world is to go pilot in the northern hemisphere during northern hemisphere summer, and then the opposite in the southern hemisphere. And I was wondering if you had thought about doing that as a way to gather more data and revenue quickly.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've thought about. Most of our partners are located on the West Coast, but I know you mentioned it being a potential drawback that it's seasonal, but one of the things that we're actually really excited about is the advantage of it being seasonal, because unfortunately wildfires are continuously more common in those early and later months, April, November, things like that. And one thing that's really hard for the detection-based companies is that they don't have a way to keep their customers sticky, right? You deploy the product once, and then you leave for 20 years and you don't interact with them again. Using our risk assessment every season, we'll be able to say, hey, you need 20 more devices over here. Hey, this wildfire risk decreased. How about we put some on the perimeter, right? And being able to do that alongside these detection companies will make the seasonality of it even more meaningful and impactful, because it will allow the landowners to feel a sense of kind of understanding about their property, even though there is kind of this uncontrollable threat looming potentially.
Thank you so much. Can you just talk a little bit about the historical data points and what you're actually capturing that's informing the risk management strategies?
Yeah, so we pull satellite imagery and open source data. So the main factors that are actually really important are a lot of the vegetation moisture indices. So all of that is pulled from satellite imagery. We spent the last 2 years focusing on those data sources, so acquiring the right data sources. Honestly, wildfire-related data is hard to access, so we've taken a while to really find the right sources, use that, filter it, clean it, produce a model that is highly accurate using those past historic wildfire data sets, training it, and then continuing to improve. Obviously, that model will continue to enhance as we analyze factors, but one thing that we do know is that 90% of the fires that we've analyzed have started in high-risk areas that we've identified by our assessment, so we're pretty confident that it's ready to go to market and scale.
You talked a bit about defensibility, so detection companies, what prevents them from flipping into the strategy that you're deploying?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. The logical, honest answer is they're so focused on getting their products out on the market. We've seen how hard it is to build a detection solution, and they're hyper-focused on getting a product, getting people willing to pay for it, and then deploying the devices anywhere that they can, and being able to kind of provide them with a unique sense of keeping customers engaged is how we focus on it. But also, like I said, kind of that data sourcing process is really hard, and we've tapped into that. Looks like time's up. Thanks, guys.
I'd like to jump out here and apologize. I had a mix-up with my notes and I forgot to introduce one of the judges. Sorry, Danielle. Danielle Colson is a co-founder and chief operating officer at Mantle Capture, which is a startup that's looking to revolutionize carbon storage and carbon capture and storage using their patented technologies based on multifluorides. Yeah, now I'll kick it off to the next.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Inferno Guard. All right, our next team is going to be from New Haven, Connecticut. They are upcycling bananas into leather products. This is Atma Leather.
Hello, everybody. This is not us. It's the picture of the leather, the red, blue, yellow. There we go. Okay. Hi everybody, I'm Janali, and today I'm going to be presenting Atma Leather to you all. We are transforming crop waste into leather. So what are we really doing? So what you see on the left is banana crop waste. This waste is typically burned and has to be collected by farmers, causing a lot of problems. And we're converting it into what you see on the right, which is our product, which is Banofi, our banana fiber leather. This material is vegan, cruelty-free, and sustainable, and we're doing this to minimize animal cruelty, support farmers, and protect our planet. So why are we really doing this? The leather industry is immensely harmful to the environment. One cow leather handbag requires over 10,000 liters of water to produce. The carbon emissions are equivalent to that of charging 18,000 smartphones. But emissions is just one part of the problem. In fact, over 90% of leather is actually tanned using carcinogens like chromium that are then deposited into rivers. In comparison, our material has a 95% reduction in water use, a 90% reduction in carbon emissions, and a 100% reduction in toxic waste. So how are we doing this? We are tapping into the opportunity that is the 100 million tons of banana crop waste. So the banana tree is pretty interesting. Once it fruits just once, it will never fruit again. So the entire tree-like stem has to be cut and then taken, deposited, and mostly it is burned. It's about 80% of the plant by weight, and it causes a lot of air pollution as well. Less than 10% of this waste is utilized, and that's where we come in. So our solution is Banofi leather, and Chandler is going to pass around samples, and this is what the product really looks like. So when he's there, so it's vegan, cruelty-free, upcycles waste, and is available in a wide range of colors and textures. I would advise you to play around with the material, smell it. Okay. I'm not sure what happened with the projection. Okay, so while you're playing around with the material, I will say that some of the bigger sheets are a little stiffer. The ones that you have in your hand are a lot more flexible, and so there's a wide range of applications around bags, shoes, belts, and more. Do you want me to do something with this? Sorry. Okay. That's cool. Okay. I'm just gonna wait for it. So while we're talking about Banoffee leather, the biggest question that we get is how does it compare to animal leather? How does it perform? And so we've done extensive testing across physical, chemical parameters, across composition. And while there's still improvement required because it doesn't have the stretch that you need for an application like car seats, it's already good enough for applications like bags and belts. So this is a little bit about what we've done on certification. So there is a growing need for sustainable and environmentally friendly alternatives. We've seen the fur industry rapidly transition to faux fur. We've seen transitions across meat and dairy. And so now we believe the leather industry is ready to transition. It's a $400 billion market. Bioleather is less than 1%, and it's growing at over 100% year on year. And that's largely driven through startups. So we're not the first out there. These are some of the players there. So there's somebody that's making pineapple leather, cactus, mycelium. What really sets us apart is we're using waste. So cactus is being grown in Mexico to create leather. Mycelium is being grown in California. But the fact that we're using waste not only makes us more eco-friendly, but it also means we can offer our material at cheaper prices. So we're a B2B business model. We've been collaborating with about 30 global boutiques which have made 2 or more products. And these are across bags, shoes, belts, and others. So these are some of the pictures of products that they've made. I'll take a second to focus on the notebooks here. So Chana's also going to give out notebooks so that you can see. So this was our proof of concept product that we made to just check if it works. And so we sold about $4,000 of these to Yale, and we have another order for $20,000 of these notebooks, which we're trying to figure out capacity for. And so these are some of the products and what they look like in larger applications to make sure that it's not creasing, it's stitching well, it's holding up. We've also gotten a lot of interest. One of these notebooks actually reached somebody in Ford's sustainability team that reached out to us for samples, and while it's not there yet, there's generally a lot of interest for this material. So just taking a step back, we started Jan last year, even though we've been researching this for over 2 years. We won a bunch of grants in and around Connecticut for about $40,000, and I went back to India over the summer where I started to hire a team, find a space. This is what our initial space looked like. We registered the company, bought some machines, and that's kind of how we got it off the ground. From July to December is when we did active prototyping, and we started sending materials to brands around November, December, and we got our first order in December, Jan. So we've gotten notebook orders, but then we even got our first material order from a brand that makes bags for about $2,000. And the focus for the next 5 months is to get repeat orders from 5 brands, so that can be our proof of concept, so that we can then go to larger brands to commercialize this. So we're a 16-member team. I'm Janali, I'm the founder. I'm a graduate student at the Yale School of the Environment. And I graduated this May, and then I'm moving back to India full-time to work on this in Kolkata. I used to work at McKinsey for 2 years, and before that I did my undergrad in chemistry. The rest of our team, Kaushal heads our facilities. He's had 15 years of experience in factory management. Shashank has worked in leather export houses for over 10 years. And a large part of our team is experts across leather and material science. And lastly, we just had some incredible advisors. Thanks to MITC, we met Caleb and Danny, who've also been really helpful in shaping our journey. So our ask today is, if any of you in the audience have brand connections in the world of fashion, we'd love to be put in touch. And the funding can really help us scale our manufacturing, improve product quality, because we're doing a lot of things manually right now, and renting equipment that we're looking to buy. Thank you, everybody, and I'm so excited I got to show you Banoffee leather, a material that makes you go bananas.
Thank you for presenting. That was amazing, and this leather is very impressive. So coming from the carbon capture space and having looked quite a bit at biomass type availability, do you have any concerns about the amount of banana waste that will be available, about running out of banana waste, or other people competing for that source of energy?
Yeah, so we've done some estimations. So India is the largest producer of bananas, And even in the one state that we're in, Kolkata, if we used all the banana waste in Kolkata, we would make over 100 million bags. So there isn't too much shortage in terms of raw material. It's also typically burned, so we're working with about 20 smallholder farmers to source this waste, and then we're paying them for this waste as well. So our little setup is like literally in between banana farms, which makes it very easy to source this waste.
Thank you, Janelle. Could you talk a little bit about your pricing strategy and specifically this idea that you can be more affordable than a lot of your competitors, and at the same time, leather is a premium product. And so how do you think about pricing strategy from a brand perspective?
That's a great question. And so within leather, there's animal leather, but within animal leather, there's also cow leather, sheep leather, goat leather, crocodile leather. So it's a wide range of pricing. And there's also plastic leather, which is a cheaper alternative. And then there's this third bracket, which is other plant-based leathers, which are at a premium to animal leather. We're pricing ourselves lower than other plant-based leathers, but because we want to still pay farmers for the waste, do it in smaller scales right now, we're about $40 a meter. We can see that going down to about $20 a meter. And the big reason for this is we're renting equipment. It's a lot of manual work right now, and we think as we scale, we'll be able to bring that down to about $20 a meter, which is roughly just around the cusp of animal leather. Animal leather is anywhere between 10 to 40. So yeah.
Hi. I spent some time in India working with sustainable textiles, and we should talk after this. But my question is, is your long-term vision to be a material supplier or to manufacture your own goods and maybe white label them?
Yeah, it's definitely to be a material company. We were seeing a lot of hesitance with brands to adopt something. They would take at least 6 to 8 months to trial it, wear it, use it, make sure it isn't having any performance issues. So we said, let's create something and let's see what happens. We were very surprised by the reaction to notebooks, and now we're kind of thinking of that as maybe just a steady source of income, but also it teaches a lot of people. It's a great way to tell your story. And yeah, it was helpful for like revenue to our factory running. So.
Very nice presentation, thank you. How do you think about building the business side of your team? There's a lot of alternative materials in this space already, as you pointed out. You mentioned you wanted to go B2B, and so it seems like developing relationships in exactly the right places will be very important. How are you thinking about building a team to do that?
Yeah, so our team largely right now doesn't consist of a sales or marketing team, and that's something that we're looking to build out. Largely, we're a material science R&D focused team, and we do see building that out also a little bit more, and building a more production focused team, but how do we scale this, how do we ensure consistent quality. So there's the production side, and then the second, which would be marketing and sales, having those conversations with bigger brands, things like that, which, yeah.
So really great job, thanks. And you mentioned production and scaling into production. What is the process for manufacturing and how complicated, what does it look like as you scale?
Yeah, so our process right now is to get banana stem from the farm. We extract the fibers, and that's a 4-day process. We then mix it with a combination of like rubber, gum, other natural ingredients. It's about 60% banana, and the rest 40% is other natural ingredients. And then the back is, in some cases, in the bigger samples, recycled plastic bottle fiber, and in another one it's cotton. So the cotton one is 100% biodegradable. The plastic one is made from waste. And so again, so these 3 layers are fused together. I'm happy to also show you what our factory looks like right now to get a better sense of what we're doing. So this is a little bit of where we started. This is how we were hanging the leather up, and this is what we kind of transformed it into, which is clearly dry racks and then middle picture. But these are some of the machines that we need. So we're doing a lot of mixing by hand, so we need mixing vats. The calendar machine kind of makes the surface uniform, so that's kind of the big spend that we want to incur in the next 2 months.
Thanks for this presentation. Always great to see folks coming out of the New Haven ecosystem. My question is on the product side. You said you're selling B2B as a supplier to these brands. Do you expect them to use your materials in existing products or develop new products with them? And in either case, what role do you hope to have in the product design?
So we don't want to change the process too much, but we realized that there are certain things, for example, styles of really soft bags that we struggled with our harder samples. So we went down this, we said we need to create a softer material. So we're using the feedback that we're getting from these brands to make it as easy as possible with existing setups and manufacturing capacities to switch to this material. So that's definitely the focus. And we think we will get there very soon. Yeah, I think we're at time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Emma Leather. Okay, so next up is going to be Flux 12 from Madison, Wisconsin. Their team is creating an organic flow battery to help enable storage for the grid. Give it up for Flux 12.
Hi, everybody. Hi, so I'm Patrick Sullivan. I'm a PhD chemist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and CEO of Flux, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about today. So the clean energy transition is well underway. I just read the newest Bloomberg fact sheet, which said 40% of the US's electricity in 2022 was produced from clean energy sources. As this clean energy transition continues to evolve over the coming decades, the opportunity for long-duration energy storage will exponentially increase. McKinsey & Company predicts a $200 billion TAM by 2040. The reason for this is multiple reasons. So one is as we get more solar and wind on the grid, we have overlap production, which results in the duck curve shown on the right. These peaks will continue to get higher as we get more solar and wind on the grid, and as electricity demand just continues to increase. The key point I want to drive home, though, is that the duration, the width of these peaks is going to continue to increase as well. The reason for this is that we're deploying short duration energy storage, such as lithium-ion battery technologies. And now this peak is over 4 hours in duration. And what's happening is that we're leaving a lot of value that I've highlighted in red on the table. So why is lithium-ion dominating the market? Basically because it's the only option available at economies of scale for utilities. There's a few risks moving forward, including supply chain risks, scaling, and fire events, which may or may not be addressed in the future. But the one that's really intrinsic and won't be overcome is lithium-ion short duration capabilities at roughly 6 hours of duration. When evaluating different long-duration energy storage technologies, aqueous flow batteries seem like a potentially really ideal solution to fill this gap. One, they're intrinsically safe because you dissolve your battery material in water, which is non-flammable. They're a lot more scalable because if you want more energy, you just get a bigger tank of liquid. And at the same time, they decouple your power from your capacity, your kilowatts from your kilowatt hours, to enable long-duration economics shown on the right. If you're unfamiliar with duration is, the analogy I like to think about is the driving range of your electric vehicle. Lithium-ion batteries can drive for 6 hours on the grid. If you want a 12-hour battery for your grid, you need to buy a whole nother car. For long-duration energy storage technologies, such as flow batteries, you don't need to buy a whole nother battery, you just need a bigger tank of solution. And so during this 6 hour duration mark, there should be an inflection point where long duration becomes more economical. Lots of studies show because of this reason, a long duration technology would dominate the market if at low cost, with roughly 2/3 of the market share. However, with current flow battery materials, whether it be the materials themselves are too expensive, there's longevity concerns, or the performance is just too bad, they're batting in this bottom box here at high cost, long duration energy storage, where it's not economical sense to capture that remaining value under the duck curve, and lithium ion will continue to dominate the market. So this is the challenge my team has been addressing out of our University of Wisconsin-Madison laboratory. We have decades of combined research experience of designing new materials for energy applications. And over the last few years, we focused this expertise on the flow battery field. We screened all the competitor chemistries hands-on on our labs to really understand their failures. We've developed over 500 alternatives with improved performance, and we filed multiple patents to protect this IP. So for example, here's some of the materials we use shown on the left. We use these organic salts, so these are oxygen, nitrogen, carbon based, which are ultimately derived from commodity chemical feedstocks that the US has. We've scaled these up in 1-ton industrial reactions and are using those materials as we speak to prototype in a 1 kilowatt device. Overall, we've been able to circumvent all the historical challenges of previous flow batteries because their challenges really at the end of the day are coming from the electrochemistry of the materials we're using. And with this library of over 500 new chemistries, we've been able to avoid those challenges. At the same time, we've also designed these materials with scalability and low-cost production in mind. We've had third-party analysis done by the energy firm DNV, who corroborated our performance with a few highlights here on the left. One is our energy density is around 50 watt-hours per liter. This is how much energy can you store in that big tank of liquid. This is about 3 times that of competitor flow batteries and is beginning to be comparable with grid lithium-ion battery systems. Our energy efficiency is at 85% DC, which this has been a huge drawback for customers trying to buy flow batteries because commercial options operate at around 70% energy efficiency. And we've been, quite frankly, spoiled with lithium-ion operating well over 90% energy efficiency. And once again, we use a non-corrosive water solution for our battery, which means it's fire safe, less spillage risk, and we can use more robust components. So preliminary techno-economic analysis shown here on the right shows that we can significantly undercut the cost of current flow battery competitors once scaled. So what does this mean? This means that we can unlock whole new value regimens for our customers. So as I mentioned before on the right here, we're kind of in this green situation where we're deploying a lot of this short duration technology. And with the current technologies, it's not economical sense to capture the rest of that value. However, with our new technology, our customers can capture that whole value range from 8 to 12 hours of duration. They can also get a lot of new value streams through capacity value, which is based on the duration of those peaks. So that's trending upwards in the market. Customers like utilities can avoid more curtailment with our improved energy efficiency. And so like when there's too much wind, too much sun, instead of shutting it off, they can store it in this battery at higher efficiency. And also due to our overall improved performance, customers can have lower downside risk and improved revenue returns on power purchasing agreements. And so what our ask is we're currently raising our initial round of pre-seed financing, where we can start to take our initial steps towards delivering this value to our customers. We're going to expand our core expertise team with some additional full-time employees. We'll manufacture our full kilowatt system. I like to think about this as our Lego block to building out larger kilowatt and megawatt projects. And also we'll have developed plans for manufacturing partners onshore to develop scaled megawatt, gigawatt hour systems. And there's some of the partners listed on the bottom that I've had several conversations with who are interested in helping us along this journey. And overall, I'm just really excited for the impact that my team and our technology can have on the climate transition. One is that we can reduce significant amount of carbon emissions by utilizing more solar and wind on the grid. With a more affordable energy storage solution, we can also improve energy equity and resilience. And also, we hope to enhance supply chain security for battery minerals by using these organic salts. So yeah, so that was about Flux. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll get started. Could you tell us a little bit more about your business model, and particularly who exactly is your customer for this?
Yeah, so right now, it doesn't make sense to sell this product until we reach economies of scale. It's just not cost effective against lithium ion. But that being said, I've talked to many potential stakeholders as a potential beachhead market, but microgrid applications could be very interesting. So for example, there's some tribal nations up in northern Wisconsin who are paving the way in microgrid application to kind of get energy independence and also energy security. And so that could be a good beachhead customer, but ultimately we're targeting utility scale project developers.
Thank you for sharing. I'd love to know a little bit more about your plans for scaling the technology. I think you showed 1 kilowatt and 20 kilowatts. I'd love to understand if that's in your lab, out in the field, kind of plans for scaling between those two and then beyond as well.
Yeah, so the 1 kilowatt won't be a product, that's just for validation of our performance. Our 20 kilowatt block, that's basically how you build out these megawatt projects. You stack those like Legos basically to build larger systems. So in our pre-seed, we want to be manufacturing our 20 kilowatt, and we're hopefully demo it on the grid as well with some of these partners I mentioned. Does that answer your question?
Is that something you would have there in your lab, or you would have someone external make it?
So we have vendors, suppliers coming from actually the vanadium flow battery space who are more mature, and they're tweaking their manufacturing process to accommodate our chemistry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You mentioned that one of your near-term milestones was building out your team. Can you talk a little bit about the profile of folks that you would be most important for you to add to that team?
Yeah, in this pre-seed stage, we definitely need more engineering expertise. We're a team of chemists, and we've done a really good job on the chemistry, but we need some help building out these prototypes, designing these systems. During this pre-seed, we won't really be generating any revenue, but then on the seed stage, we want to get some MBAs on the team and start building out the business sales model as well.
Great job. Can you talk a little bit about your timeline to market and quickly getting into the utility scale applications, and what do you need to do to demonstrate to get there?
Yeah, so I think I have a slide on this. Let's see, I got too many slides to work through. Here we go. So this is a very high-level overview, but our goal is to win a utility scale contract by 2030. We have international suppliers that can do megawatt scale for us. So as soon as our chemistry is optimized, that stack's optimized, we can go ahead and do this megawatt demo. And utilities that I've talked to, that 1 megawatt system is really what they want to see before they would sign on to a large-scale utility contract. So we're hoping we will have the chemistry optimized pre-seed stage, system optimized seed stage, Series A, do this megawatt demo, Series B, get this cranking out on utility scale.
Very nice presentation, thank you. What gives you confidence in the sub $100 per kilowatt hour number? As you know, costs everything in this type of application. And I wonder, especially on the material side, since it sounds like these are new materials, what gives you confidence you can get there?
Yeah, so that's the 100 kilowatt is quotes we have from international vendors for those exact materials at about 1 gigawatt hour scale. That's about 20,000 tons, 10,000 tons of material we're talking about. We actually probably need to hit lower than that if we're competing with lithium and emerging technologies. But once again, once we're scaling to terawatt hours, hopefully with, these are all being derived from petrochemical olefins and ammonia, syngas, like that. So we do have a secure supply chain for this in the US. We just need the right partners to make it work. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Great job.
Okay, thanks, Flex 12. Our next guests are going to be coming from Boston. Their idea is to create carbon negative products from wastewater. This is Aquaterra Innovation.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Tainer, and I'm one of the co-founders of Aquaterra Innovation. The World Bank estimates around 80% of global wastewater isn't even recycled or minimally treated before being discharged into the environment or injected back in the ground. That's significant damage to the environment, and it's an incredible waste of a scarce resource across the world. Climate change isn't going to make this any easier. We need to fundamentally change the way we can procure materials and resources such that we can pursue a more sustainable and circular future. I saw this firsthand while working as a water engineer in oil and gas in West Texas. 600 million gallons a day get produced in the Permian every single day and injected right into the ground. It's unreal to see all of this water and this large of a resource go to waste. But what's even more shocking is that it's causing a lot of groundwater contamination and induced seismicity. These impacts have escalated so quickly that even regulatory bodies have already taken tangible action and implemented injection bans across the region. This has industry leaders, and particularly water team managers at these companies, gravely concerned, because you can't produce hydrocarbons without generating this wastewater. But water treatment's been around for a while, right? Let's just kind of do that. There's nothing new there. Well, the challenge is this is 2 to 3 times saltier than the ocean. So conventional desalination techniques are extremely expensive and energy intensive. And this is not a solution that currently can be applied in this space.
That's why we started Aquaterra Innovation. ATI wants to disrupt the way wastewater is handled in the Permian by not only seeing it as a source for clean water, but as a source of valuable minerals and salts. We can take the constituents in this water to generate a wide variety of chemical products for multiple applications, even carbon mineralization. To do this, we will implement a two-sided business model where we will charge oil and gas operators a fee to treat and produce their water, while also selling our products to customers on a quantity basis. This is a radical departure from current operators and competitors in this space who primarily operate on the left-hand side of the screen. Our solution involves a series of pre-treatment steps and electrolysis that will generate a clean stream of water, valuable byproducts like hydrogen and chlorine gas, and sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide, by producing and just selling it, we believe we can reduce the disposal wastewater volumes by 25% or higher. And on top of that, if we contact this with CO2, we can generate sodium carbonate. And carbonates have a variety of sustainable applications in industrial processes today, like glass manufacturing. We believe using this absorption process, we believe using this absorption process, we can capture up to about 6% of Texas's annual CO2 emissions alone. And you might be wondering, none of these technologies today individually are fantasy. A lot of them are implemented at scale in commercial applications today already. But what's innovative about us is we're taking two separate industrial processes from two separate industries and combining them into one streamlined value chain process. We believe that this approach, we can master this approach by mastering the interfaces between these different systems. And the reason we think that this is innovative is because it allows us to be robust, modular, and rapidly scalable for execution, which means we can deliver a quick impact faster than a niche technological solution. So we recognize that at the heart of this, we're treating immediate wastewater needs, and so we've selected our beachhead as the Permian wastewater handling industry, which is valued at $12 billion. However, with our chemical manufacturing side, we will go after the sodium hydroxide market in the US worth about $5 billion today. Upon success in both of those markets, we will expand our profitability by entering the carbonate and growing CCUS markets. For reference, these are the types of companies and industries that we're looking at and talking to for our process. What we think is robust about this approach is we're confident that our beachhead can give us cash returns today while we're optimizing and developing our chemical and carbon negative products. Once we demonstrate dominance across our target markets, we think we can repeat this process across other wastewater opportunities in the US and even other wastewater opportunities across the world. So why us? There are a lot of other players in this space, but many of them don't do everything that our stakeholder needs. One of our key stakeholders is oil and gas companies, but they don't understand this area very well. It's not their area of expertise, so they're not going to solve this problem themselves. There are existing wastewater companies in the Permian that do provide kind of an end-to-end solution, and at a competitive cost, but they struggle to reduce disposal volumes because they only see the value in the liquid side. Technology companies and treatment and extraction of value from waste companies exist in this space as well, but the former is not cost competitive and they only provide a technology, which is not something that oil and gas companies are interested in. This is a process they would rather not manage. And then similarly for value from waste companies, they quite vary in their ability to reduce the amount of water produced, and they don't have any decarbonization impacts in their wheelhouse. So naturally, that's where we at Aquaterra feel like we intimately understand our end users' pain points and have developed a solution that we think is more compelling than any of our competitors in this space. In addition to being or holding a significant competitive advantage, we see a strong sustainability movement growing in the hydrocarbon industry. We've seen tangible public pressure rise out of that sustainability movement and even result in tangible regulatory action. This is stuff that both regulatory agencies in New Mexico and Texas are actively studying and pursuing on how to figure out to solve this problem. But how do we do this? Well, we think our first step immediately is to start building our prototype and gathering our core group of end users. From there, we want to align on a robust location to set up a pilot, where we'll then start to obtain funding so we can hire more people and build our pilot. Once we get our pilot up and running, the goal is to incrementally scale up to a commercial capacity and then expand our service offering to include carbon negative chemical production. In order to do all this, we're a very passionate team of 2 right now with Lauren as our CTO, who's got deep experience in process separation and process modeling, which we think can help us optimize and iterate on our solution really fast. My experience in the wastewater industry and systems engineering skill set will allow us to quickly and effectively maximize our impact in this space. And finally, our advisor, Jeff, has multiple years starting wastewater companies himself, as well as years of developing financing and developing infrastructure projects. At Aquaterra Innovation, we think it's rare that we have this overlap of high technology readiness and high impact to the climate. And that's why we have a strong impetus to commercialize this process. We look forward to being at the forefront of the Permian, and we look forward to building connections here with the community today and test our process. Thank you.
Nice job. Thanks for a nice talk. My question is, based on the technical diagram you showed earlier, it looks to me like you're stringing together and integrating a couple of different known processes. Correct me if I have that wrong. But if that's the case, then why hasn't this sort of thing been done before on the oil field?
Yeah, so people have mostly been focused on the water side and how to reuse that. And before this, people weren't really thinking about that. They had a way to get rid of the water. It was injected underground. But only recently have these regulations started coming about, and people have really started caring about this. So I think that because of how new it is in terms of these regulations, that people are just now starting to think about this. And fortunately, we're one of the first to really think about combining these steps and thinking about both sides.
And just like one quick point to add, one of the reasons this hasn't been looked at is because just the growth of the Permian and water production has been so fast that companies who are in this space already are just trying to put out new wells to inject. There's very little time and resources to consider, I guess, a way to change the game. Yeah.
So a two-part question, I think, related to the right-hand side of the work. I think, one, I imagine that sodium carbon is not the only thing that's come out of the cleaning process. So what are you doing with the rest? And what is the rest? And then how large of a market is sodium carbon?
The first part, what we can make out of the products, I can talk about the waste a little bit.
Yeah. So in terms of what's coming out, so we do have some byproducts, but we do still have waste. There'll be a very concentrated brine solution. Right now, we think we could at least reduce this by 25%, possibly do more with some better process modeling and optimization. So we would still have to inject this, but any reduction is good, and they're going to accept that, and they're going to want that. And then,
go for it.
What was the second part?
Oh, you were gonna ask, maybe the value of the sodium carbonate market is just down there for now in the U.S. Additionally, what to do with that waste? Current recycling technologies out there compact it into a very dry, a wettish sludge, and then ship it off to a landfill. Because this is an already very industrial part of the country, there are many landfill sites that accept these quantities of waste. There would be like trace amounts of silica, radioactive materials, minerals that people currently aren't caring about, trace amounts of potassium, things like that.
Thank you. Thinking about that right-hand side a little bit more, on the sodium hydroxide, if you're looking at that alone, would you be able to compete against, what would be your competitive advantage if that were a standalone business?
Yeah, so currently we have to kind of look at state-of-the-art, which is the chloralkali process. And I guess if we're just comparing before saying our advantages, we can operate, we think, with similar electricity requirements, maybe a little higher. We would need some more heat requirements due to some of the pre-treatment steps. But we think some of the advantages we could offer is one, looking at, I guess, local users of sodium hydroxide and like reducing on those transportation costs, and also people that are really interested in their footprint and like things like Scope 3 emissions, things like that, or even just coming from more sustainable sources.
You showed your pathway for growth over, I think, the next 4 or 5 years. I'm curious what risks, or what you're looking to de-risk over those different steps.
Yeah, one of our key risks is process efficiency. Again, just combining these, we want to make sure it doesn't just explode in terms of energy use and energy requirements. So that's a technological risk that we really want to consider. The second risk is, I think, regulatory. So there are this is a brand new space. Historically, nobody's in Texas and New Mexico at least has used wastewater for what they call beneficial reuse. And so while regulatory is written and commissioned a lot of papers at universities locally to study this, there hasn't been a precedent set that allows for this type of process. So using that clean water, for instance, for other uses such as like vegetation, agriculture, biofuels, et cetera, has not been legislated before, and that's something that there just isn't education in the space to handle. So I think regulatory risk is one other risk that we want to prove out in that time frame that's key for commercialization, and it requires a lot of time explaining and educating the regulators, but at least they're motivated.
So you mentioned carbon capture as a key differentiator, but that's also the furthest out for you time-wise. What's to stop some of these other companies, particularly in material recovery, from coming in and doing that faster than you can?
Yeah, so some of the different companies in the extraction kind of type space don't necessarily focus on the volume reduction of water. They may treat it and clean it, but they're kind of, depending on the application, they may not and just give it back to the industry. So given that's a key pain point for the Permian, we think we're addressing that differently.
Thanks so much. So you mentioned the other players in the space are just at fully at capacity. So what would you guys do differently to avoid those bottlenecks so you would also continue to scale, and then someone else kind of come in with a new idea on how to manage this in 5 years from now?
Yeah. Sorry, just so I understand the question, it's like, yeah, everyone's really full. How do we manage the growth of this water forecast in the Permian? Like, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like people are having a hard time scaling because they're just at capacity. So
they're having a hard time scaling, maybe with new ideas. Most of the ideas in the space right now are just thermal distillation, which is really crazy with how salty this water is. Places that are growing fast right now are just drilling new injection wells to put that water in the ground. Sorry, I think.
That's one more.
We're a little bit behind. We can't hear the question. Sorry about that.
Happy to catch up with you after.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Aquaterra. Okay, we're going to have one more team come up, and then we're going to take a quick break. It's going to be Polyos Bio from Boston, Massachusetts. They're turning food waste into chemicals.
All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Makari. I'm a co-founder of Polyos Bio, where we're converting food waste into high-value chemicals. Some of you may have seen the stats around food waste and will know that it's a massive global problem. In the US alone, we produce about 250 million tons of food, and almost 40% of that, 100 million tons, is wasted. 30 million tons of that 100 million tons goes straight to landfills, where it decomposes and releases methane gas and contributes about 5% of US greenhouse gas emissions. So at Polyos Bio, we're developing a new process to divert food waste away from landfills and convert it into high-value chemicals. The process starts with raw food waste, which is often mixed and contaminated and pretty hard to deal with. So we use an insect pre-processing step to do an initial upcycling and homogenization step on the food waste. So the insects eat the food waste, they grow, and then we use those insects as the basis for our proprietary growth medium. That growth medium then goes into industrial fermentation process, and this is kind of our core innovation and proprietary technology for our company. So we're using synthetic biology to engineer microbes to do this first-of-a-kind conversion from the insect-based growth medium into a variety of different sugar polymers. So we view this as a platform technology where we'll be engineering different strains of microbes to produce different sugar polymers. The insect pre-processing step isn't proprietary to our company. There are a number of other players who are already treating waste biomass with insects. And for the most part, they're producing proteins and animal feed, which is a fairly low margin business. we are pairing insects with this precision fermentation step for the first time, which allows us to continue the upcycling process and produce very high value end products and a very profitable business. So our engineered microbes give us a couple advantages. First, we use synthetic biology to significantly increase the yield of the fermentation process, which drives down our costs and makes us more profitable. And second, the engineered microbes allow us to use food waste, a waste material, as our only input, which makes the process much more sustainable and cheaper. So what are these sugar polymers that we're targeting? They're a $100 billion global industry, and they're used in a lot of different applications across a bunch of different industries, from medical to cosmetics to sustainable materials, pulp and paper, and textiles. And there are a bunch of different sugar polymers that make up this industry. The common thread between them all is that they're produced through very outdated and unsustainable production methods. So we see this as an industry that's ripe for disruption. While we can produce any of these sugar polymers, we'll initially be targeting hyaluronic acid, which is attractive for a couple of reasons. First, it has a very large market size, so it's about $15 billion in annual revenue, and it also has very high price points. So it sells for anywhere from $500 to $2,000 per kilogram, and we're initially targeting the cosmetic space, where hyaluronic acid is used as an active ingredient in a lot of high-end moisturizers and anti-aging creams and other skincare products. I mentioned that sugar polymers are produced through outdated and unsustainable processes, and hyaluronic acid has kind of some of the biggest problems in that area. So there are currently two processes that are used to produce this. The first, which is shown on the top of this page, is chemical extraction. So this process typically starts with an animal tissue, like the combs from the top of roosters' heads. You cut those off, grind them up, and do a chemical extraction to get the hyaluronic acid out. This obviously has a lot of issues as far as the ethical concerns with using animals as the input, but also is very chemically intensive. More recently, some of the producers in the market have shifted to fermentation processes, which is what's shown on the bottom of the screen. But this process differs significantly from the one that we're proposing. First of all, these producers use native hyaluronic acid producing microbes, so typically Streptococcus, and they're pathogenenic, which comes with a lot of health and human safety concerns. They also use traditional inputs to their fermentation process. So glucose as the carbon source, amino acids as the other nutrient sources. Each of those inputs have big upstream supply chains with a lot of embodied carbon. So our process eliminates those supply chains and significantly reduces overall greenhouse gas emissions. The chart on the top of this page shows the emissions per ton of sugar polymer produced. So this is tons of CO2 per ton of sugar polymer produced. The column on the left-hand side is the emissions from our process. So for every ton of sugar polymer that we produce, we emit about 67 tons of CO2, which sounds like a lot, but if you look at the second column, the traditional processes emit almost 1,400 tons of CO2 for every ton of sugar polymer they produce. And we have the added benefit that we're using food waste as our raw material. For every ton of sugar polymer we produce, we use 500 tons of food waste. And if that food waste was to end up in landfills, it would decompose and release almost 4,000 tons of CO2 equivalent in the form of methane emissions. So by diverting food waste away from landfills, we're able to eliminate those emissions as well. Overall, the total net emissions impact for our process is about 5,000 tons of CO2 per ton of sugar polymer that we produce. Scaling this impact up over time, by 2030, we plan to have annual emissions impact of over 5 million tons, and by 2050, we hope to have nearly a gigaton of emissions impact. And this would be once we've expanded globally to other sugar polymers and once we're processing about 7% of global food waste. It's not just the sustainability that's important to us, we also designed this process to be highly profitable. So our techno-economic analysis shows that we can produce purified hyaluronic acid for about $400 a kilogram. And this compares to industry standard of anywhere from $800 to $1,100 per kilogram. And if we're selling hyaluronic acid for about $1,000 a kilogram, which is kind of the middle of the range that's sold into cosmetics, we earn 60% gross margins. So scaling that up over time, by 2030, we plan to be generating about $600 million of gross profits. We have the right team to develop and commercialize this technology. I have 5 years of experience in business strategy, operations, and finance, including a couple years of experience in climate tech venture capital and climate tech startups. My co-founder, Amin, has 12 years of experience as a chemical engineer and synthetic biologist. He did his PhD at Howard Salas's lab at Penn State and his postdoc at Chris Voigt's lab at MIT, two of the kind of founding fathers of synthetic biology, and has developed a lot of the tools that are in use in synthetic biology labs all around the world. We've been supported by some of the key players in the Boston startup ecosystem. Last year, we participated in the Engines Blueprint program and regional iCore program, and we're currently in Nucleate's EcoTrack and in the Harvard iLab Climate Circle. This prize fits into our longer time fundraising timeline. So currently we're looking to raise 100 to 300,000 of non-dilutive funding to do 6 to 8 months of de-risking experiments. That'll put us in a place with some data to raise a more institutional pre-seed round at the end of the year, and then fund a year or year and a half of additional engineering work to optimize our microbes, at which point we'll go out and build a pilot facility. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer questions.
Thanks for a nice presentation. My big question is, when it comes to the process and microbes, what are the metrics you're driving for? Because that seems like 60% gross margin, all of the unit economics seem to flow from there.
Yeah, so a lot of it is really around the yield of the fermentation process. So I mentioned that existing fermentation producers are using native producers. Those typically have low yields, and they're not doing a lot of engineering work on those microbes to improve yields. So we're really hoping to increase the yields through the fermentation step, and then ideally, using a waste material as the input, and then insects to do the pre-processing. We'll have very cheap costs of raw materials relative to producers who have to buy glucose and amino acids on traditional markets.
I wanted to ask a little bit more about that whole supply chain, because you shared kind of a 4-step process. Do you plan to have that whole process happen internally, where you can purchase the insects and just use those as the inputs? And what input risk is there from that early upstream side?
Yeah, it's a good question about vertical integration that we've thought about a lot. And it would be less capital intensive to just kind of do the fermentation step and not deal with any of the upstream processing. We have some concerns about being able to control the quality of the inputs into our fermentation process, and also control the kind of overall sustainability outcomes if we're not doing the food waste sourcing and upstream processing. So our initial inclination is to try to be as vertically integrated as possible. That said, we're not going to be doing a lot of the kind of new development or innovation on the insect processing. There are a bunch of companies that are developing tech-enabled solutions for growing these insects, and we plan to basically source those off the shelf from suppliers.
Great pairing of an MBA and PhD. I love it. It's working well for us. So, curious how you guys are looking to scale your team over this time horizon.
Yeah, so the first step is definitely scaling the technical team. So Amin is going to be primarily leading the engineering efforts, and we definitely will need to get more synthetic biologists on board to do a lot of that work. Once we have an initial product, or once we can kind of produce something like hyaluronic acid at lab scale, then we'll have a product that we can go out and start marketing to potential customers, and then it'll be a matter of scaling the team on the business development side to start building the right relationships with both suppliers on the upstream side and then our end customers on the downstream side.
Thank you. Super interesting topic. I never thought about what I put on my face, and now I am. I'm not sure I like it. Because you included the factor of the avoided landfill emissions in your calculation, can you talk to me about where the carbon in these products goes at end of life across the different applications and markets that you might be selling into?
Yeah, so I think it probably depends on the sugar polymer that we're producing. So for hyaluronic acid, this would typically be like a skincare product that you would put on your face. And so I haven't thought about it deeply, but I would imagine that that then is basically, discarded from your body in the same way that like your other skin cells are. I mean, most of it is actually absorbed into the skin, hyaluronic acid, and then kind of acts as a water absorbing element in the skin.
Great job. So on the techno-economics, food waste is generally pretty distributed in many different places, and aggregating it at the concentration levels that you need for fermentation can be costly. What are your expectations for like the size of the fermentation plant and that you need to get to the economics of scale that you're talking about? And how does that relate to the food waste available around that?
Yeah, so food waste processing I think would differ depending on what sources we're using. So initially we're planning to partner with point source generators of food waste. So this would be like your agricultural processing facilities, which would supply sufficient food waste for the first few years of our development. Over time, we would need to go to post-consumer food waste probably to hit the volumes that we're talking about. And really what we'll hope to do at that point is kind of have like a hub and spoke model where we would do the fermentation at a central hub, but that we would do the insect pre-processing of the food waste closer to big cities where the food waste is primarily generated. So we want to minimize the distance that we have to ship raw food waste because a lot of that content is just water. Do the insect processing, which reduces the actual volume a lot, and then we'd ship that the insect-based growth medium to our fermentation facility. And as far as the volumes go, we're planning to have a modular bioreactor, so something like 100,000 liter bioreactor as kind of our base unit, and then we could scale up our fermentation facility depending on the throughput that we needed.
So we've been talking about your beachhead market, and I imagine you have bigger plans. If everything works really well, what markets do you hope to have to tap into?
Yeah, so hyaluronic acid is, as we mentioned, a huge market. So our 2030 goal is 10% of the hyaluronic acid market. So we'd hope to expand beyond that, but there's also a bunch of other sugar polymers that we could target. Chitosan is a big one, so this is an even bigger market than hyaluronic acid, and is getting a lot of press right now for sustainable materials, biodegradable plastics, that kind of thing, so that's a super attractive one for us. And then there are a lot of other sugar polymers that are extremely high value, so even up to like $60,000 per kilogram that we could produce very profitably that don't have us quite as big a market share. The benefit of our platform is that once we've engineered these microbes to produce one and to intake the carbon source from the insect-based growth media, then it's just a matter of kind of slightly changing those microbes to produce any sugar polymers. So we would hope that we could kind of produce a whole slew of them. All right, thanks so much.
Okay, we're
going to take a quick break. So about 10 minutes, we'll be back here at 3:50. There's food in the kitchen over there, as well as coffee and refreshments. Great.
right. Oh, check. 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 All right, everyone, we're getting started. Please make your way back to your seats, and then we can begin. Thank you. Please start making your way back to your seats. We're going to get started in just a few moments. Thank you. Yeah, I know. All right. Are we good on the tech? We're good to go? Great. Okay. Our last judge is here, which means we have a quorum, which means we can get started. All right, so kicking things off with the second half of today's presentation is going to be Helix Earth Technologies. They're from Houston, Texas, and they want to create dehumidifiers to save us on AC energy costs. Helix Technologies.
Hey. Hello? Okay. At Helix Earth Technologies, we're helping save our environment by reducing air conditioning energy costs by more than 50%. Hello everybody, my name is Rowan. I'm the founder and CEO of Helix Earth Technologies. So our company story really begins with one of the largest real estate developers in Houston, Frank Liu. And Frank keeps telling me something along the lines of, you gotta help me be more efficient at cooling. I'm spending more than $70,000 a month in electricity alone at Post Houston. Now, Post Houston is one of his large commercial properties in Houston, and his air conditioning energy costs account for about 17% of his total operating costs alone. And what Frank is doing is actually indicative of a much larger global problem. Building cooling accounts for about 20% of all of the energy used in buildings worldwide. And in addition to being costly, air conditioning accounts for about 4% of the total global CO2 emissions. That's almost as much as all the passenger vehicles globally today. There are 2 billion air conditioning units on the market today, and they cost an astronomical $230 billion to run per year just on energy use alone. And as the world gets warmer and warmer, these numbers will just get worse and worse. And actually, by 2050, air conditioning will account for about 8% of the total global CO2 emissions. But what's worse than even all of that, believe it or not, is that more than half of the energy used to run them goes completely to waste. And the problem is humidity. You see, the problem with cooling air is that some of the energy goes into dropping the temperature of air, and some of the energy goes into pulling humidity out of the air. That humidity component is called the latent load, and is generally seen as a parasitic load on air conditioning systems that accounts for more than 50% of the global air conditioning energy use. And the industry has seen this as a necessary cost of operation, but we found that to be unacceptable. So we came up with a solution to eliminate this wasted energy that we call Helix Micro. Now, I originally developed Helix Micro as a new filtration system as part of my dual status as an engineer at NASA and as a PhD student at Rice University. Our filters are patent pending, 3D printed out of unique microscale topology that also takes advantage of disruptive chemistry. We showed that we can scale up our filters, and ultimately we proved out our technology for space and found out that they're actually even better for the Earth. So we found out that we could use Helix Micro to enable high rate, high efficiency, retrofit dehumidifier systems for existing air conditioning systems to eliminate their latent loads and save more than half of the energy used to run them. And so far we have a proof of concept for our system that shows that our systems are 6 to 8 times more efficient than anything on the market today. Our filters are scalable, they're easy to manufacture using 3D printing and other conventional methods. They're low cost to produce, they can be made of recycled and recyclable materials, and they can be custom manufactured so that they can be used in existing infrastructure. So with little to no changes, you start saving energy and money. Now this is unlike existing competitors who for decades have had very little impact. Their methods on the market today are slow or inefficient in their dehumidification. What these systems do in a refrigerator size volume, for example, we can do in the size of a shoebox. They require many system changes to be implemented in the first place. They can oftentimes be very prone to failure, and sometimes they use non-regenerable materials and are non-starters, and we don't suffer from any of these problems. In fact, our technology has been so compelling that we've been awarded 7 different grants and funds from places like the DOE and from NASA. We have multiple patents on the way and multiple publications for our work, and we're now getting ready for our first customer pilot at Post Houston. So we're going to see if we can help save Frank some money on his energy bill. To service Post Houston, our systems are going to cost about $70,000 to produce, which we charge Post Houston about $205,000 for. We'll save Post Houston about $70,000 per year. This includes the operating costs of the system energy use and replacement filters, which will result in a recurring revenue for our business. Overall, our systems will pay for themselves in about 3 years. Anything after 3 years is money in Frank's pocket. Now, this first pilot is going to be incredibly crucial for us because it's going to be the launching point for our venture. It's going to showcase our system energy savings and performance at the commercial scale, and this CEP prize will really help us get there. Okay, so from that first customer pilot, our goal is to gain a foothold in the massive global air conditioning markets by selling retrofit dehumidification systems to commercial customers. Our go-to-market strategy is based on extensive customer development interviews, where we find that commercial real estate owners are our ideal beachhead market because they want to keep their existing air conditioning units because they spent a lot of money on them, but they also want to save energy and money, so a retrofit system is ideal for them. So far we have 3 LOIs for our system as well. And so to spearhead these markets, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on raising funds in the next 6 to 12 months to expand our team and to scale up our product development to get to a commercial scale. And so that by 12 months from now, we can launch the Post Houston pilot that will showcase our system energy savings and performance at the commercial scale. And then from this pilot, we'll raise follow-on funds. And by month 24, we'll develop a ready-to-manufacture system that we can sell to commercial customers. We'll sell our systems to commercial real estate owners. These are people who own revenue-generating properties like commercial gyms, restaurants, malls, you name it. We've been approached by many different places. We're going to sell individual retrofit dehumidifiers to our customers, and in addition, we'll provide replacement filters and replacement working liquid that will result in a recurring revenue stream for our business. We're going to focus on the Houston area for our first sales. Houston has the ideal climate for our technology, as well as having some of our first initial customers. So for the first 6 months, we'll focus on driving sales in Houston before we go to the greater Texas region that has a serviceable addressable market of almost $3 billion. And then from there, we'll expand out to the greater United States and globally to places like the UAE, where cities like Dubai would really benefit from our technology. And we're doing all this so that we can have some impact on our climate. This is what we're doing it for. And so if we were to deliver our systems at scale to our total addressable market, we could reduce CO2 emissions by about 2% of the total global emissions today, and by 2050, by about 4% of the total global CO2 emissions. And we realize that we can't have this impact without having sound economics. So our systems, they cost about 75 cents per square foot for the customer. We'll save them about 25 cents per square foot per year, which is about a 3-year payback, which we find is the sweet spot for the commercial customers that we've been talking to. Overall, for the total addressable market, we could save over $100 billion in energy use alone. Now, this is in addition to the massive global impact that we could potentially also have. And we also have a wonderful team We also have a wonderful team that's experienced that will deliver on our promises. We have a deep technical expertise from world-renowned experts in HVAC systems research, and we're combining that expertise with a co-founder that has a proven track record of building successful commercial businesses, so we think we have all the necessary ingredients here for success. What really sets us apart is that we have a proven technology that's ready to deploy that has by far the largest potential impact for businesses worldwide. But in addition to that, and most importantly, we're going to help save our environment while we do it. Thank you, guys. Yeah, great question, thank you. So we have spoken to a couple different folks who are interested in the technology. That was our first route, actually, was to pursue some of these companies like Emerson and Johnson Controls who are actually developing some of these technologies. But based on our customer development interviews, folks said, no, we just want, you just give us a retrofit system, we'll buy that from you. So the answer is yes, there are some people working on these technologies. But what sets us apart is our filtration technology that allows us to perform what classically has been very ineffective in a fundamentally different way, which is what gives us a competitive advantage.
Very nice presentation. Full disclosure, we're invested in a company called Transera, which is something similar. So my question is, what does the material have to work and where does the water go? I think I see a pipe on the right edge of that image there. It'd be helpful to understand that a little better.
Yeah, great question. So the filters we've developed allow us to capture very small droplets for very low pressure droplets. So that's a fancy way of saying very efficient capture, low energy use. What we do is we'll deploy a liquid desiccant, it can be any classical desiccant, and basically what the filters allow us to do is enable high surface area contact between the liquid and the gas, so we can artificially crank up reaction rates. So this is really a process intensifier. The challenge with deploying droplets across all industries is once you do it, you have to capture the droplets, and that's really the challenging factor and the limiter. So what we've developed is a filter that allows us to do that. The ones that you see here are made of just plastics, and you can make them out of metals as well. What happens is the droplets then get captured in the filter, and we can drain them out, and then go and regenerate them, and run a whole cycle through. Does that make sense?
Great stuff. Thanks for the presentation. So I know you're from Houston. I'm curious about the choice of Texas as like the first place to do this. Just a quick Google search on my phone. Average commercial rate in Texas is like 9 cents a kilowatt hour. It's like, that's not high. And your payback period is good, 3 years is good, but you can get much better elsewhere. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your choices of markets on a go-forward basis.
Yeah, thanks for your question. One reason is the climate, very humid. So the savings we can get there can be in excess of 60%. So one thing is just the sheer amount of savings we can provide. You're right, the energy costs are pretty low there, but we still have customers that are interested directly in our neighborhood. We think that, at least in the early days, we'll have to sort of provide full stack support. So it makes sense to sort of have geography be sort of a key factor in picking at least our first few customers for purposes of support. But you're right, I mean, we can go to New York, where the electricity costs are much higher. Places like Florida, where environments are similar but could be higher in terms of energy costs. But really, it's just the geography aspect, and also we have initial customers as well, and then also the environment.
It sounds like a lot of the customers you've approached so far have been commercial customers. And to really reach the full potential of this technology globally, I imagine that at some point you would want to go to residential customers as well, from a climate impact standpoint. From a residential perspective, do the economics still work? Are they just as compelling? And how complex is the retrofit process?
Yeah, great question. So economics still work out at the residential scale, not as favorably. In the US at least, residential markets for more efficient HVAC systems in general is very challenging. So things like heat pumps that are very common in Europe are almost unknown here in the US just because energy prices are cheap and the residential customer is typically not as savvy to energy savings. They're more savvy to the bottom line. Why would they pay $5,000 more for a system that might save them, a few $100 a year? So, and it's also talking to some of the larger manufacturers, they think that reducing latent loads in air conditioning systems for residential customers doesn't really make sense today. It would make sense overseas, so places like the UAE and Europe as well. If we were to go penetrate the residential markets, we'd probably go there first before coming back and doing, the U.S. markets. If that makes sense.
Would love to hear a little bit more about the maintenance involved in this. Is it more or less than a normal unit? Does the addition of the filter require any maintenance outside of the normal maintenance cycle on the unit?
Yeah, great question. So we would fit in with normal service cycles of HVAC systems. So we provide replacement filters once every 2 to 3 months. And then in terms of just other system components, we would have to just top off our working liquid, the liquid desiccant that we'd be using. So that as far as maintenance, that would be pretty much all it would be for at least consistent maintenance. Does that answer your question?
And I have one more question about geography and markets. What if you go to places where they don't have as high humidity as Houston? I've been to Houston, I felt the humidity. But what about places that are drier? Are the energy savings similar? How do you do the economics there?
Yeah, great question. So in places like Phoenix, where it's hot but dry, the energy savings don't really, the economics don't add up to it. So if it's very dry, we typically would not approach those markets. Although latent loads are still a bit of an issue there, just because of perspiration and just the latent load from humans as well. And so there's some potential, but they don't face as big of a latent load issue as the majority of the world would.
Could you please go back to your team slide real quick?
Oh,
sorry.
I'll be happy to talk afterwards.
Great. Thank you very much, Helix Earth Technologies. Okay, next up is Sia Bio. They're a company that wants to protect our microbes, to protect our plants. Welcome, Sia.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So, who here has ever wondered how we grow the food that we eat? Well, right now it is chemical fertilizers. The problem is they're killing our planet. Currently, they're responsible for more than 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's the equivalent of 1 billion miles driven in a gas engine car. Additionally, they destroy native ecosystems, killing the land that surrounds the farmland. So what's our alternative? Well, we like to think of microbes as tiny little chemical factories that can actually make fertilizer in the soil on site. So why aren't we all using microbes right now? Well, many of the strains we want to use are very delicate and we can't manufacture them because they have to be alive in order to work. In fact, in talking to customers about this, keeping microbes alive for delivery is the holy grail of sustainable agriculture. We are Sia Bio, and now we can. So we've developed an IP-protected proprietary coating that forms on microbes in seconds. You can see that blue color is the coating forming on microbes. It's safe, fast, efficient, and scalable. And importantly, it protects against the key stressors that microbes can't survive right now. The first of which is the drying process. In order for microbes to be transported anywhere beyond where they're produced, they have to be dried. And as you can see here, these two images have the same number of microbes, but only the green microbes are alive. And so our coatings enable orders of magnitude more microbes to survive this drying process. Additionally, we can protect against key stressors for agriculturally relevant strains. So many of these strains are very sensitive to temperature, but as we can see here, we can protect microbes from temperatures that can cook an egg for up to a week at 48% humidity. These are conditions in storage sheds in places like India and Brazil, where they can't currently even store fertilizers, chemical or not, because of the risks of explosion. So we're really enabling these microbial fertilizers to go where they couldn't perform. We're readily scalable. We work on every single microbial strain we've tried. And we protect against every stressor we've tried, including UV light, extreme humidity, extreme temperatures and temperature fluctuations, and processing stressors, including the drying process. And we can do all this at an incremental cost of only 0.03% per acre, orders of magnitude less than less effective methods. Our business model is to be a contract manufacturer and sell B2B to companies that are developing proprietary microbial strains for agricultural uses. We anticipate that our ultra-fast formulation and our ability to tune our coatings to specific microbes and stressors, along with our million to billion times more active microbes per batch, make us uniquely competitive in this space. Additionally, we extend the shelf life of microbes by over 10 times without requiring cold chain. So we're not only enabling these companies to store and transport their microbes, but we're doing it at lower cost. What this means for our end users is that we can double farmers' profits. Currently, chemical fertilizers can be as high as $130 per acre for farmers. Our end user cost is estimated to be about $14 per acre, which means even as our microbial companies have being the middleman there, we stand to make 80% profit. And this is a large and growing market. Currently, microbial agricultural products are a $4.3 billion market with a 12% CAGR. But with our enabling technology, we anticipate capturing a significant portion of the overall fertilizer market, which is $180 billion. Additionally, the companies we're partnering with are not just thinking about fertilizer. They're developing strains to screen pesticides and prevent against drought. And so what that means is we can tap into the $250 billion agrochemical market. And we are well on our way. We currently have 12 agreements with partner companies, and in our first year's annual revenue is estimated to be $2.3 million. So where we are right now is we've recently incorporated and protected our fundamental IP. We're expanding our IP portfolio as well as our personnel, and we're looking to grow and build a manufacturing plant so that we can scale production for our customers. And our team is uniquely suited to make this company a success. We have Dr. Tim Moy, who's our CEO, who has over a decade of experience in cross-functional leadership, as well as technical experience in product development and design. This technology came from my lab and junior faculty at MIT in the chemical engineering department, and one of my students who helped develop the technology is currently working with us, and he's going to graduate from Berkeley this year. We additionally have an exceptional advisory board that has over a century of combined experience and $7 billion in total fundraising. And so what I'd like to ask of everyone here is if you care about a sustainable future for food production, please come talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Wonderful presentation. Do you have any competitors?
We don't have any competitors. We see them as collaborators. So there are other companies working in the protective space. The majority of them are looking at things like proteins and polymer-based protective coatings. Those are much thicker than ours by several orders of magnitude on the micron scale. Ours are nanoscale and can be used in tandem with those. So not only do we have more efficient protection, but we also see those companies as partners to us.
Great job, everyone. Can you talk a little bit about the traction? I know you had it on the slide, the traction with 2.3 in revenue. How are you arranged with those partners?
Yeah, so we have agreements with companies we have a kind of twofold revenue model right now, where we are using the current CRO model that these companies are used to using, where you pay for an analytical screen. Normally that's to develop kind of analytical testing for the end product. We're using that cost to optimize our coding, and then we get revenue per batch. So a lot of that is just companies initially signing agreements for that initial screen, which we charge a flat rate for per microbial strain. And many of these companies have multiple strains they're going to be working with us.
Thanks for this presentation. So you mentioned you're going to be contract manufacturer. Can you talk a little bit about the sales cycle for contract manufacturing and kind of how long you would work with a given client in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it speaks to a question someone asked earlier about seasonal products. So one of the advantages of this product is the shelf life of our microbes is so long that we don't have to manufacture on the conventional agricultural growing cycle. Additionally, for contract manufacturing, generally what the price point is you pay per deliverable batch. One of our advantages that's going to keep our costs low but our consumers happy is that we get 1 million to 1 billion times more live cells per batch, so our batches are much more efficient. So generally, the types of customers we're talking to would order twice to 3 times a year for us for each strain, and each customer has several strains that they're looking to produce. I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
Thanks for a nice presentation. How was the coating developed? What is it made of, and how has it been tested so far?
So the coating is a self-assembled coating made from generally recognized as safe components. They're food extracts and metal ions, basically. They're all commodity chemicals, and as you saw how the coating forms, it self-assembles pretty much instantaneously. It has been tested by freshmen at MIT. So it can survive their stressors, and it can also be coated by that. So the majority of the R&D has been done actually by undergrads in my group. We've done stress tests for extreme cold, extreme heat, humidity, UV light exposure, extreme salt exposure, salinity, pH fluctuations, and different drying methods.
Thanks so much. Sorry to answer my question, which is about safety or any regulatory approvals. It sounds like most of the inputs are not on that spectrum. So, but is there anything that needs to happen in order to make sure that this is safe for the market?
Actually, no. So all the components are generally recognized as safe, and not doing any chemical modification to them or genetic modification to the active microbes. So we are all set for delivery to kids at agricultural applications.
Yeah, one more quick one. Could you speak to the composition of your team and advisors in a little bit more detail? If you didn't have time.
Yeah, so our team is comprised of me, Tim Morgans in the back there, who is finishing his EMBA, so he will serve as CEO, and as I mentioned, has both product development and cross-functional leadership experience. Ben Berg is finishing his undergraduate degree, is going to move in as a lead R&D person. Our next hire is going to be COO to manage our plant build or construction, which is what we're raising seed funds for right now. Our team beyond that, the R&D field can be done with mostly technician-level scientists without awareness. Several hires along with plant management. And our advisory board has both business advisors and also experts in microbial relevant companies. So we have someone who's on the founding board of Indigo App who is advising us, and so we're looking for some advisory board as well. And it looks like I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to end a little early to catch us up. Thank you.
Thank you one more time, Sia Bio. Okay, our next team is trying to bring direct air capture into commercialization using an innovative novel technology. This is Arbin from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Arbin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Our company name is Arbin. We feel very excited today to have the chance to share the project with you today. My name is Xiaoyang Shi, you can call me Yang. Currently, I'm a postdoc in Earth and Environmental Engineering at Columbia University. I got my PhD from Columbia also, and my partner Elvis He's a postdoc in chemical engineering at MIT, and he got his PhD from Carnegie University. Yes, I'm very lucky and I've been working on direct air capture for almost 10 years. Under the guidance of Professor Klaus Leitner, we have published about 30 journals on top, 30 papers in top journals, and our study has been reported on the homepage of Columbia University.
So hi everyone, my name is Elvis, and I have a 7-year background in CO2 utilization. So during my PhD at Cornell, I landed on Forbes on uncertainty and energy. And currently at MIT, I focus on integrated carbon capture and utilization at multiple scales.
Yes. So we are very delighted to have exceptional advisors on board to support our urban vision. Professor Klaus Leitner, he is the father of direct air capture of CO2, and he will serve technical advisor for urban. And we are also very delighted to have Mike and Juliet as our mentors through the MIT Climate and Energy Prize. Humans emit 40 gigaton of CO2 per year, and the target of DOE is to reduce 50% of reduction and by 2030 and zero emission by 2050. The cost target is less than $100 to capture and store 1 ton of CO2 around 2030. Our solution, urban solution, is different from the traditional method in the market, such as thermal swing or pressure swing. We are moisture swing. We are using water to drive the chemical reaction to capture and release CO2. Think about our sorbent is like a tree set in the air. It can capture CO2 in the direct emission. The difference is our kinetics is 1,000 times faster than natural trees. After minutes, our sorbent is fully loaded. Then we put our sorbent into water or exposed to moisture air. We can get a high concentration of CO2 for utilization or storage. Then we take our material out from the water, dry it in the air. It can capture CO2 again. This is the cycle. Moisture swing has disadvantages. It has the least energy cost compared to the other technologies in the market, such as maybe the Climeworks is using, and also strong-based material, carbon engineering is working. It's 1/3 of energy consumption compared with EV, and 1/5 compared with strong-based material. And also because we're using water instead of heat, so our degradation is low and the energy efficiency is high. For example, the any material time to work is working, it has a degradation after running dozens of cycles. And also, carbon engineering and Terraroom, they're using strong alkaline. They need to hit 800 to 900 degrees C to regenerate their materials. The energy consumption is very high. So we have been working on moisture swing by using ion exchange resin for many years. Because at the beginning we didn't understand its mechanism. We don't know why it captures CO2 in dry and releases in wet. Because this is a totally new surface chemistry. So my PhD study explained why it can capture CO2 in dry and release in wet. Now we can rationally design the second generation material to improve its performance. And recently, we have designed the second generation material with one type of nanoparticle. It has significantly improved the performance of moisture swing. And based on this invention, I won the Lab to Market Corning Prize, and Corning would like to provide our raw materials for our future collaboration, and the patent is being prepared by Columbia University. This is the performance of moisture swing. The starting point is a fresh material ready to capture CO2. When the humidity decreases, we see the orange line decreases, then our sorbent captures CO2. The blue line decreases, the CO2 concentration in the air decreases. After our sorbent is fully loaded, then we increase the humidity level, CO2 will be released from the sorbent. So the CO2 concentration in the air increases. This figure shows the 5 cycles of our sorbents. By the way, our sorbents can run 10,000 cycles without degradation compared with the AV material. If we compare the first generation and second generation materials by 1 cycle, the first generation takes 1,500 minutes to finish 1 cycle. And the second generation only needs 100 minutes. If we consider the uptake rate, how much CO2 our sorbent can capture per gram and per hour, the second generation has improved 50 times than the first generation. This is a pilot project we're gonna build based on the second generation material. And this process shows how we capture CO2 from air and get high concentration of CO2. The yellow sorbent, yellow part is our sorbent, captures CO2 in the air. After it's fully loaded, we put our sorbent into the red vacuum chamber, and then we vacuum the chamber with spray water from the nozzle. We can get a high concentration of CO2 with the humid air, up to 50% of CO2 concentration. If we want to get pure CO2, the humid air mixed with high concentration of CO2 will go to the humidifier. We condense the water molecule, and then we can get 99% of CO2 in the last blue box at the end. We also calculated the container size. If our sorbent occupies 40% of the container size, it can capture 3 tons of CO2 per day. If we want to get the 5% of CO2 concentration, the estimated cost is $70 per ton. If we want to get 99% of CO2, the cost will be less than $90. And simple.
All right, so our business model, so currently we are mostly focused on the left part, which is selling carbon credit. And last year, Frontier reached out to us and has shown interest in advanced market commitment. This is something we are doing right now. And we also want to explore the different opportunities of doing on-site utilization of different purities of CO2. And if you look on the left-hand side, that's the market projection for dual air capture with ground sequestration. But we also recognize the vast opportunities of tuning the CO2 concentrations and get a total different utilization routes. So this is my background. One of the spin-off from my PhD work is a finalist in the Carbon X Prize competition. And I also recently founded by Eric and Wendy Schmidt as a Smith Science Fellow, and my co-founder has won the Corning Advanced Prize, and currently we are being shortlisted as a finalist in Active Fellow, and we are also doing customer discovery along the way. So moving forward, the key aspect I want to mention here is we want to focus on running our pilot, which is capable of doing 3 tons of CO2 per day by Q3 of next year. That's the rate set by Carbon Removal X Prize backed by Elon Musk. And so right now we are actively applying for non-dilutive funding sources such as DOE SBIR to do our pilot, and we want to stay in touch for potential synergies moving forward. Thank you.
It's a fast path to market for 3 tons a day, or 3 tons, yeah, so very impressive. I'm curious what your scale up looks like after that and how large you think you would be able to scale.
You're saying after 3 tons? Yeah, I think our philosophy is to build up a distributed module device instead of a large plant. We plan to build, I think 3 tons per day gonna be our maximum capacity. And we prefer 1 ton per day. For example, if the shipping container size can capture 3 tons per day, we will build 1 million of this kind of device to distribute air, capture 1 million tons CO2.
And is that driven by your choice of business model or driven by the tech?
Depends on the tech, because we believe the learning by doing curve can reduce the cost significantly instead of a big plant.
I know you were tight on time when you were hitting the slide on the cost projection. Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah, sure.
And maybe talk through it in greater detail a little bit?
Yes. So we estimated the capital cost is less than $100K for a container, one device. And it could be less, but we won't put a number here. Then the maintenance fee based on the experience is 5% of the capital cost. And the depreciation time is 20 years for mechanical device. And for our sorbent, we can change every 1 year because our stability is very high. And then based on that, we got this number.
What about variable costs?
Variable costs.
Electricity, how are you powering it? Is that included?
Oh, you were saying the different concentration, right? Cost of different concentration?
No, on the, how are you energizing the system? And are those costs included in
Yeah,
your?
there are going to be, so our system is totally different from other thermal swing system. So that's going to be new system. We roughly estimated there are going to be pump costs, there are going to be vacuum costs, and if we don't want to get a high pressure of CO2 in the compressor, of course we consume water. Every ton of CO2 we capture, we can consume 1 ton of water. So these are energy we don't need heat.
Thanks for a nice presentation. Just to help me get a sense, what is the cycle time between capturing will dry all the way to dehumidifying again?
That's a good question. So the kinetics is critical for sorbent because that depends on, that can decide how much CO2 we can capture each day. So for our case, let's take 100 minutes to finish one cycle. If I remember correctly, Climeworks needs 3 hours to finish one cycle. And we can improve, if we scaled up, we don't need to run the full cycle. We need half time. That means when the sorbent is achieves half capacity, we stop there because it's going to be faster. By the way, I want to mention the kinetics is critical, but stability is also very critical.
The figure on water usage one more time.
The figure
On water usage.
Water usage. Sure. You can go to I can give you a big picture. So,
Give me 1 sec.
the 1 ton of CO2 we need 3 tons of water to drive the head, and we consume 1 ton of water. We can just pay attention on the last line. That's U.S. industrial water usage is about 80 million gallons per day. And if we use 1 day of U.S. industrial water consumption, we can capture 60 million tons of CO2. Of course, water consumption is going to be a thing we need to consider, but it's totally doable.
Thank you. And what concentration of CO2 emitter do you need in order for this to work?
Yeah, so the concentration of CO2 from the air, that's 420 ppm we capture, and at the end, depends on our customer use. Now we want to sell carbon credit, that's enough for 45Q tax reduction and to government. So the concentration of CO2, the first pilot, we want to get around 40% of CO2 with humid air for cement pure. So that can store CO2 directly. If we want a pure CO2, we also can achieve here, sell it to CO2 utilization company to convert CO2 to synthetic fuel. That depends on the different end users. We can give them different concentration of CO2.
Thanks for this presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about the factors that go into siting in terms of atmospheric conditions, in terms of where the carbon will be stored on the other end, where are the best places to put this technology?
Yes, that's a good question. Critical. We've been thinking about this. So we see the relative humidity in the United States. I think the first market we will concentrate on the United States and see Colorado and Arizona. They are very good place and dry place. We can capture our CO2 very well. And if you, could I go back to the slides here? So I can talk a little bit more. So this graph is very interesting to show if we build our pilot in Las Vegas, the first one, the yellow one, our sorbent is going to be 100% functional. But if we build our pilot in Seattle, our sorbent is only 50% functional. It's like relative humidity here in Boston, that's 40% relative humidity. That means our sorbent is kind of 90% functional. We want a dry place, and the place can store CO2.
Thank you again.
Thank you. I think my mind.
Thank you, Arvin from Cambridge, not from Carbon. Next up is going to be Caravel Bio. They are creating cell-free systems for sustainability from right here in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Caravel.
Hello everyone, my name is Trevor, this is Emily, and we are the co-founders of Caravel Bio, a catalytic biotechnology company, and we're excited to talk to you today. So it may surprise you to learn that today 85% of the vanilla flavoring we consume actually comes from petroleum. Less than 1% actually comes from the vanilla orchid and vanilla beans. Now, as recently as 2015, several companies, including Nestle, started to announce that they were going to remove these synthetic flavorings as well as synthetic colorings from their compounds, saying they wanted to maintain flavor and low cost while moving to sustainable alternatives. Even our beloved Dunkin' and the manager of Donut Excellence at Dunkin' Donuts said they're going to start using alternative dyes, and yes, that is a real title. So the problem with this, though, is that there simply aren't enough of these natural compounds to use at the global scale that we currently use them. And also they're expensive. Specifically looking at vanillin. Today, vanillin from the vanilla orchid costs about $5,000 per kilogram. Now, of course, we would all love to just have natural vanilla from the vanilla orchid. We simply can't grow enough of it, and also climate change is making it more and more rare. In years where there are bad weather events, extreme weather events, the cost of vanilla from the vanilla orchid can go to as high as $25,000 per kilogram. Thankfully, there is an alternative, and it's called fermentation. Fermentation is the production of vanilla through genetically modified organisms that make vanilla from sustainable sources. The problem with fermentation, though, is that it's expensive in comparison to the traditional source of vanilla, petroleum. And Emily's going to talk about how we can solve that problem and make natural vanilla cheaper.
So if fermentation is the predominant source right now, let's dive into a little bit first and how fermentation works. So conventional fermentation, you feed a living microbe a carbon source. And then very simply put, out comes the desired product and microbial waste. But the problem is this is inefficient. And typically in the process to convert a feedstock to vanillin, you have 78% of that desired product. And there's three overarching costs when we do a simple techno-economic model for this process. First, because this organism is living, it needs food. Second is the feedstock chemical. And third is something we call process inefficiencies. And all that makes the cost to produce this $300 a kilogram. But that's still too expensive to allow wide adoption. And Caravel Bio is doing this differently. So where we are innovating is something called cell-free technologies, and we do cell-free differently. So if you see on the right-hand side, this is how we're doing cell-free. You do similar, you feed our system a carbon source, but it's not living. But even better, we use enzymes and support structures called spores. And we get theoretically 100% of the desired product, but even better, we can recycle our full system. And so if we look at the techno-economics, we eliminate food for organism because it's not living. We are significantly reducing the feedstock chemical because the process we use can still be natural while using a cheaper feedstock, one of our differentiators. And we eliminate process costs and inefficiencies. And we believe that with this process, we can decrease the cost to $25 a kilogram. So what we are selling is a product that enables a process that fundamentally alters the economics of the bioeconomy. So if you see on the right here, how we make our system is that we engineer microbes to produce enzymes. But in that bacteria also, it self-forms a spore, which the enzymes attach to. And out comes our system in blue and yellow. But even better is what this enables is something called continuous stirred tank reactor system. Kind of a mouthful. And the benefit is that this is a continuous flow versus fermentation uses a batch system. And this allows us to save on water costs, energy, efficiencies, and time. And then out comes vanillin. And we filed a provisional patent on the underlying technology of this system and our process and product. So here's the data that shows that we can do this. Our system is more stable in a variety of industrial relevant conditions. And the benefit is that we plan to go way beyond the production of vanillin to every and many, many different markets to power the bioeconomy. And so if you look here, the blue bar is ours. And you can even see against a free enzyme, not only is our system better, but sometimes it's even more powerful than it would have been before.
So within this, on our pathway to market, we effectively intend to first demonstrate scale with high value, low volume products in the flavors and fragrance industry. Within that is that we intend to build a pilot for vanillin production in the next 2 to 3 years to start producing vanillin using our cell-free system. After that, we intend to show further scale with joint ventures to move into plastic recycling, textile recycling, and other industries where enzymes are powerful, but simply today too expensive to use. Past that, if we're able to demonstrate scale and cost-effective transportation of these systems and actually demonstrate that this works at a low enough cost to do commodity chemicals, we'll move into sustainable aviation fuels and fuels for maritime fuels. Importantly, these are industries that are unlikely to be electrified during this century or maybe ever, and these fuels will continue to be needed far into the future, and making them using these inexpensive systems as opposed to fermentation will be highly advantageous both for the carbon economy and the climate. With this in mind, the ability here to decrease carbon emissions is enormous. For the flavors and fragrances industry, if we're able to capture just 1% of the market using our carbon negative technologies, we have the potential to remove 1.2 million metric tons of carbon every year. If we do enable plastic and textile recycling, which today is simply too expensive because of the enzymatic systems needed to do them, we have the potential to enable 170 million metric tons of carbon removal or prevention into the atmosphere. And if we are able to do commodity chemicals, there's the potential to remove 2 gigatons of carbon between now and 2050, and then far into the future as well, continue to do that. So with this in mind, again, my name is Trevor Nix. I'm a PhD candidate in biotechnology at Tufts University here in Somerville. This is my second company, Caravel. My first company I started in undergrad is called Spira. It makes colorful proteins and algae to replace petroleum-based food dyes.
And I'm Emily. I'm a second-year MBA candidate at Boston University. This summer I worked at Ginkgo Bioworks and an ag tech platform company spun out of Flagship. And before that I worked at Google and Verily Life Sciences. Thank you very much for listening, and we're excited about the future with Caravel.
Thank you for that presentation. So at the end there, you shared some really big sites and some really big ways forward. What are some of the technical challenges of going from this flavors and fragrances process to the enzymes and commodity chemicals that you have in your sites early on?
Absolutely. So within that is, when we think about the unit economics of this system, the main cost component for us will actually be how much does it cost to make our enzymes, and then how long do they last, and then also the feedstock costs. So within the fact that enzymes, there are thousands of different enzymes that catalyze thousands of different reactions, it will be our ability to make those enzymes using our system cheaply and efficiently, and then making sure that they last a long time.
How did you choose vanillin as your route to market?
Yeah, so we've had over 45 conversations with potential partners in this industry, and there's a few reasons why. First, right now, that 85% number is petroleum, but that other 15% is another feedstock that is still not natural. So one of the components of market dynamics is all of these companies are using the petroleum-based vanillin, and that means that like the demand is there. It's the highest demanded product for flavors and fragrances, but they've all committed to using sustainable sources. So we've heard over and over again that there's not a cheap enough alternative, but the market demand is there. And it's just we need to make it cost competitive, but also not toxic.
Thank you. Do you think there's any risk that consumers will feel that something as high-tech as this fits on the artificial side of the equation as opposed to the natural side?
Yeah, I'll touch on it and I'll have Trevor talk about it. So we've spoken to a lot of people about GMO and the perception of that. I think it's definitely a hurdle. We've looked into the regulations a lot though, so depending on where you are, this wouldn't be considered GMO, this would be a natural ingredient. But that is a potential risk of our business because depending on how regulations shape up and where we'd be selling, the labeling would change and the feedstock would change the label too.
What are your barriers? Why in your timeline is the alternative fuels opportunity like multiple layers down?
Yeah, definitely. We initially intended to go that route, but at the end of the day, there is an elephant graveyard of biotech companies that have gone there first. Our intention is that, right now we're at a technology readiness level of 4. This works at the bench scale. I've shown it works with several different enzymes. Within that is that we do have to go show that we can make these systems at scale and cost effectively. The ability to have the time to prove that we can do that and optimize those systems, going to vanillin gives us that time because we can work with higher margins. As you saw, if we can make natural vanillin and sell it for $500 a kilogram, our process is going to be more expensive at first, and we can further optimize well into the future to eventually make commodity chemicals with smaller margins.
Along those lines, what do you expect to learn from additional markets like vanilla that you can then apply and launch into larger markets?
Yeah, sure thing. So the first thing I'll start there is like technologically. The process of doing these, so as Emily mentioned, this is a completely synthetic biology base. So having an organism make this and then have it make the enzymes and the support structure that enables their stability. Within that is that we're first building a platform technology to effectively do high throughput synthetic biology experiments, to be able to do millions of experiments a day to create systems that are as stable and long lasting as I mentioned they needed to be earlier. From that, once we have that platform built, then is the ability to extend that to several different enzyme classes. So that's the first bit.
And then when we were talking to customers, there's a lot of similarities between the customers that would buy flavored fragrances and then translate that into plastic waste. And so one ability is to translate our technology into different markets by using similar customers and similar industries. The beauty industry contributes to 1/3 of waste in landfill, and so that could be vanillin is used in some products for them, so we could also help recycle their plastics as we develop the technology and sell into those markets.
Yeah. I also just briefly will add around supply chains. Today, the supply chains for the feedstocks to make natural vanillin exist already. For those commodity chemicals, those supply chains need to be much, much larger. But those are processes that are currently kind of at the pilot scale at different industries or are still being optimized with potential future technology partners in that space.
So where are you planning on kind of the infrastructure for producing this, and do you have scalability there, and what are the additional team members that you need to build on in the next phases?
Yeah, definitely. So within this, we've already have lab space lined up. We're moving to Portland, Oregon later this year into a lab space there. Within that, we also already have our first employee lined up. She's someone that's already worked with me on this technology at Tufts. And then into the near future, we have other things planned out.
Yeah, so with our technology, we're going to hire some more synthetic biologists. We also plan to hire a process engineer as we get closer to that pilot scale. So for our pre-seed, we plan to have 5 employees, including us, or 6 employees, including us. All right,
and I think we're at time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caravel Bio. Okay, we have one last team to present today. This is a team that's creating true plastic circularity, zero carbon. Welcome, Simon Cycle.
We are Simon Cycle, and we are here to fix the plastic recycling industry. We all enjoy the benefits that plastic brings to our daily lives, but it comes at an immense harm to our planet and its inhabitants. Globally, we produce over 400 million tons of plastics every year. This contributes to 4.5% of all global CO2 emissions. This amount could be smaller if we recycle more. Shockingly, wealthy nations like the US have an effective recycling rate of less than 5%. Instead of recycling locally, we instead ship out on average over 1 million tons of plastic waste to lower income nations every year, where we create environmental hazards for marginalized communities. This plastic waste leaks into the rivers and the oceans, harming our ecosystem and increasing the presence of microplastic in our food supply. Every day, we see a greater need to take action. Industry players trying to address this crisis have committed to circularity pledges, a minimum amount of recycled plastic that needs to go into their finished product. But at the moment, they're unable to meet such pledges. Throughout the dozens of customer interviews we have conducted, we have realized there's a common sentiment among all of them that can be summarized like this quote, where it was communicated to us, the recycled plastic is hard to find and its quality is inconsistent. The reason for this is that mechanical recycling is the predominant way of recycling in the industry. The issue is mechanical recycling downgrades the quality of the plastic. You can take long molecules of hard PET, which makes up water bottles, and turn them into soft textile and fibers, which consist of shorter molecules. But not vice versa. It's a dead end, and the plastic eventually has to end up in landfill and waste. And an ever-growing number of fossil fuel-derived plastics have to be generated to meet the demand of high-quality plastics in this world. To resolve this quality dilemma, new technologies have been developed, such as advanced and chemical recycling technologies. They consist largely of breaking each and every bond of the molecule, taking them back to fuels or smaller molecules. But then they have to undergo all the traditional processes to arrive to the original polymer. The issue with this is that this is energy inefficient. Worst case scenario, it actually ends up emitting even higher CO2 emissions than it would have taken to just produce plastic through the traditional processes. What we need is technology that is able to eliminate all the energy-intensive steps out of equations, while being able to take plastic of any quality and upcycle it for all applications. Well, that is where Cycle comes in. Instead of breaking every bond, we do the opposite. We rearrange the molecule and form new bonds. We convert the plastic molecules of any length and turn them into cyclic intermediates. These intermediates can then easily be extracted to produce plastic of virgin grade quality. And this is how it looks like. With our patented process technology, we're able to take PET and polyester waste of any quality, put it through a two-step reaction where we exploit thermodynamics and catalysis to efficiently turn these plastic molecules into the cyclic intermediates. In this stage, we're then able to remove all the impurities from the plastics. And as we cool down our process, we're able to open these intermediates to produce plastic that is indistinguishable from fossil fuel derivatives. A product ready for all market applications. And we can do this highly energy efficient. Because we eliminate all the energy intensive steps out of the process, our energy intensity is about 80% less compared to traditional means of plastic production. Because our process also only uses moderate temperatures, we can fully power our process through renewable energy to produce 100% carbon-free, high-quality plastics. At scale, our process has the potential to eliminate PET's carbon footprint, which is over half a gigaton of carbon dioxide per year. Now, let's talk about the profitability of Cycle. Currently, we can collect our supply at a cost of less than $600 per ton, depending on the quality of the plastic waste. Because of the simplicity of our process, we then only require around $580 per ton of operational expense to upcycle this plastic waste into high-quality plastic pellets. This plastic can then be sold to bottlers at a range of $2,000 to $2,600 per ton. The bottlers then convert this plastic into the products that the brands we all know and utilize. This means that Simon Cycle can sell recycled plastic on margins of around 50%. And to take advantage of these high margins, we're planning to initially go into the U.S. cosmetic bottling industry, as the players in this market have high profit margins that allow them to better invest in the sustainability of the products, and they're not FDA regulated. Once we capture this market, we're planning to expand to the vast market of non-olefinic plastic, which is almost $300 billion in size. And we're planning to capture this market efficiently. Due to the relatively low cost of the capex of our technology, in conjunction with the high margins of our process, we actually expect the Simon Cycle process to have a payback rate of 3 years and a useful life IRR of 32%. Due to this attractive, strong unit economics, we're confident that we can get strong interest for joint ventures to initially deploy this technology at scale, capitally efficiently. Once we prove this technology at scale, we then plan to transition from selling plastic to selling plants, as we aim to increase our market penetration as fast as possible. With this, we project that Simon Cycle will have EBITDA by 2030 of $109 million. We're currently raising our seed round. As we're planning to use all this capital and any non-dilutive funding and price awards in order to construct our first pilot plant. We're currently at a scale of 1 kilogram per day, and we're planning to scale up to 10 kilograms per day. This size will allow us to provide plastics to our potential customers to demonstrate to them that our product can solve their pain points. This will be the foundation as we aim to have a commercial plant of 20,000 tons per year constructed and operational by 2026. And we believe we have the team to accomplish this mission. My co-founder, Dr. Jerry George, has been the creative leader and leading expert in this technology and has been an innovative solution in the plastic industry, recycling industry for over a decade. I myself have worked at ExxonMobil, experiencing the reality of the current plastic recycling technologies, and have worked at startups previously, scaling up technologies in climate tech from lab scale to pilot plant. Along with the future members that we're planning to onboard to the team, and the advisors that have been through this process many times before, we are confident we have what it takes to get this venture off the ground. So, if you are an investor, or someone passionate about fixing our plastic recycling industry, or know someone who is, please get in touch with us to see how we can give plastic a place in the circular economy, so we can create a cleaner future for everyone and everything today. Thank you. Now we're ready for all questions.
Great job. Can you talk a little bit about the supply chain, like where you get the plastic? Obviously, big problem, understood. How are you actually sourcing plastic for your plants, and how do you aggregate that side of the ledger?
Yeah, thank you. So there's various sources we can tap into. Just basically we came back from the largest municipal recycling facility in New York. We've spoken to one in Boston as well, and to some others. So MRFs, they collect here, for example, 40 tons per day, which is a significant stream to tap into. New York, 75 tons PET plastic, among the 1,000 tons that costs per day. And we have also talked to plastic recyclers that are collecting from the oceans. That works as well. And we're planning with this tremendously high margin process to actually unlock new supply chains for polyester textiles, for example, which don't really have a good supply chain just yet. And so our process can really take a variety from well sorted but very low quality plastics as well.
Very clever technology. I'm wondering how broad the chemical scope might be. It seems like it could be quite a bit broader than PET, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So the patent is covering, as you, or anyone who is a chemist in the group would, in fact, realize that this technology can work for any functional polymer. So we can basically, we're aiming to tackle the whole non-olefinic polymer space, which is anything that is not polyethylene, polypropylene, and styrene, or PVC. You've seen Mark on this.
To that point, how much of that has been validated in the lab, the breadth of the input material?
It's validated for PET completely, and we've started on nylon textiles, so that is, but we're tackling mattresses later on, once we have the money for it.
Thank you. A little more about the business model. I see that you are planning to do a combination of joint ventures, and then you talked about selling plants. Who would be the counterparty in both of those relationships? Both who are you selling the plants to, and who would you look to be doing a JV with?
Thank you very much for the question. So from the JV perspective, we're looking for anyone who is looking to reduce the carbon footprint of plastic production. We're still very early in the conversation, so we're still trying to get who is interested. But from early, it ranges from oil and gas companies who want to reduce the carbon footprint through new technologies, to anyone who consumes plastics and wants to basically reduce the supply chain costs while also reducing their upstream emissions, because that's a big challenge in their industry right now, where they're unable to influence their suppliers to reduce their carbon emissions. From the licensing perspective, the same logic applies, and that's still very early on. But what we have seen is that there's strong interest in licensing such technologies that are highly profitable, as they're able to then capture not only a new business chain, but also additional profits through this process.
During those small pilots and large pilots, what are you looking to de-risk? And are you looking to do those on your own or partner with sponsors?
Thank you very much for the question. So with the small pilot plant, what we initially want to do the risk is that the process works at a much larger scale. Of course, it's been proven at a lab scale, but one of the concerns that we have, for example, is the kinetics aspect of it. As we scale up the reactors and so on, what are the challenges that we need to overcome to make sure the chemistry remains consistent and we're still able to produce a quality product? As we move to a large pilot plant, the next challenge is, can we turn this batch process into a continuous or semi-continuous process to ensure that we can efficiently produce all this plastic at a large scale. Those are the biggest challenges at each size that we're trying to accomplish, but there are many additional challenges on the smaller side that we still need to overcome, but those are the main ones.
To the second part of the question, you asked who we're looking for as a partner. We are aiming to in fact hire a senior process engineer from our network to really assist with the ideal design and de-risking executive steps. And we have mentors in the large-scale processing industry, so those will help us as well.
Thanks for this presentation. You mentioned that there have been other attempts at chemical recycling that are less efficient in your process. Why has no one tried it your way, or even kind of the general approach that you're taking?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Folks have looked into ring opening polymerization in the 1990s, but simply polycondensation has become the dominant and simple way to make plastics. But it's not the best way to recycle plastics. Our technology can do that because we are exploiting these ring chain equilibria, which others can't simply. And we have the patent to other stuff.
Ready, we have time for one more question.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your plan for textiles?
Yeah, so textiles, we have a nice slide on it in theory. It's interesting, you have bottles that are polymers of a long chain, and textiles are simply short. And the good thing about our process is that we simply rearrange any polymer of any length into these intermediates, and we form all these new bonds. And that means we can take weights of any kind. In between is, for example, thermoforms. They have so they're intermediate length between the borders of the textiles. And so we are able to use textiles that have color. That's not a problem. We will need to work on the additives. So we'll target 100% polyester waste first, but the cotton will have to leach out. We have R&D done that already, but we will start with the easy things first.
Thank you very much for your time. As well as any questions, and I appreciate you listening to our pitch on how we can fix the recycling industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon Cycle. Great. First off, let's give a huge round of applause to our participants today. Some great pitches. I have just a couple announcements to make. So firstly, we're going to take a 5 to 10 minute break while we set up the stage for our panel. In that time, I'm going to ask the judges to come back here to a room so we can deliberate on the results and crown finalists today. Additionally, if you are interested in attending the Greentown Labs tour and you are a participant or judge in this year's competition, please go to the front. We need you to sign an NDA in order to take the tour. The tour will be happening around 6 p.m. after the panel has concluded. And then finally, maybe that's it. You know? Okay, we'll see you back in a little bit for the panel discussion. Great, thank you. Oh, Audience Choice Awards, that's it. That QR code on the screen is for the Audience Choice Award. Make sure you send that around to your friends and family if they're not on the live stream looking at it already. Doesn't work. Holly, we're going live. Hold on. Try again. It works, all right. All right, so we're gonna have until the end of the panel discussion to get your votes in. So please make sure you text this QR code to friends and family, make sure they vote, and then we will crown an Audience Choice Award. All right, thank you.
Okay, so I am really excited to go into our panel discussion, and today Ksenia is going to be moderating our panel, and I'm really pleased to be introducing Ksenia. She is a partner in McKinsey's energy practice. She's a leader in the energy transition space. She works with startups, with investors, with utilities, and with renewables developers on projects around decarbonization and green business. But more importantly, Ksenia and her colleague Gert have been collaborators with the Climate and Energy Prize team. They've really helped us brainstorm and grow the competition. So I'm really glad that she's leading this conversation. And the topic of the conversation is looking at climate tech journeys and looking at how climate tech companies have actually gone from ideation to scale. And I'm going to hand over to Ksenia.
All right. Can everybody hear me? It's very loud. Is this a normal volume? Yes? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aditi. I'm joined by a couple of folks from startups that have been doing quite well in this space. I think we can learn a lot from them. Just by way of quick thank you and introduction, it's been a really wonderful day. Thank you to all of the participants, judges, and of course the organizing team. As Aditi said, I'm Ksenia. I'm a partner at McKinsey where I actually do a lot of energy transition work. And we're really excited to partner on events like the Climate and Energy Prize because increasingly it's something we actually spend a lot of time and a lot of energy on. Why don't you guys come on up here? While we wait for scores, we're going to do a quick fireside chat. And I am joined by Brent Keller, who is the co-founder and technical team leader at Via Separations, and also by Max Meek, who is the Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs at VIA. So what we'll do is I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, your companies, maybe a little bit of the journey you've been on to get to these hot seats today. And then the theme of this is sort of from ideation to scale, or from ideation to real company, real numbers of employees. What does it take to make that transition, and how do you get to commercialization? So I'll ask a few questions along those dimensions, and if anyone wants to speak up, we can also take a few audience questions at the end. Let me turn it over to you to start. I don't think the mic is on.
Check. Hi everyone, it's good to be here. So a little bit about VIA. So VIA is an electric transmission company. For those of us who are energy and climate nerds, and I think there are a lot of us here in the audience, electric transmission has really come into the spotlight, particularly in recent years. Study after study is sort of coming out indicating that we need to at least double our transmission capacity, not just nationwide, but globally and in Europe, pick any geography you want, in order to achieve our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, as well as energy access goals. And so, but at the same time, and what folks haven't really tackled or addressed yet is that it's getting harder and harder to build transmission. Nobody wants large transmission towers in their backyard. Nobody wants large infrastructure in their backyard. Transmission is a very thorny problem from that perspective, and it's only getting harder as more and more transmission is being built and more areas have transmission in their backyards. VIA's trying to solve this with the so our technology, we're using superconducting transmission lines. So this is a class of materials that have been around since the 1980s. These are a type of material, conductor material, that when you get below a certain critical temperature, they exhibit zero resistive losses. So as a result of that, you can flow a lot of electrical current through these lines, and you can do so at very low voltages relative to conventional transmission lines. And it's really the voltage level that dictates the land footprint and the viewshed associated with those big conventional transmission lines. So we're commercializing a new generation of superconducting transmission lines that are getting a bunch of transmission capacity with very with smaller physical footprints than previous generations of transmission lines. So I'll stop there for now.
Where did you come from?
Where did I come from?
Yeah.
Well, I was born in, Veer, so like I said, this class of materials has been around since the 1980s. There was a lot of federal funding that actually went into superconductor applications in the early 2000s. And an individual named Dr. Steve Ashworth, who's now our chief scientific advisor, he was at Los Alamos National Laboratory and piloted the first overhead superconducting line in the history of superconductors. So previous versions of superconductors have all been very costly, very expensive, and very heavy. And so they've all needed to be either sitting on the ground or underground. Steve Ashworth pioneered a new way to cool, to keep the line cool, and was the first to demonstrate an overhead superconducting line. And that opens things up considerably. But it took, from the mid-2000s when Steve Ashworth and his team at Los Alamos successfully did that, it took, over a decade before Veer was formed in 2019. But it was really Steve Ashworth who brought that to the attention of our initial investors and co-founders of Breakthrough Energy Ventures. And they took the idea, and now we're running with it full scale. So there was a long period of time where the idea kind of just sat on a shelf, but it's running full speed ahead at this point.
This one's working. Excellent. So thanks everybody for your attendance here, and look forward to Q&A. So my name is Frank Keller, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at VIA, and we're focused on chemical purification. So we're going after the 20% of industrial emissions in the States that come from boiling one chemical constituent off of another. So that cuts across chemicals, petrochemicals, fertilizers, and the pulp and paper industry. And if you, one useful analogy, if you think about making a pot of pasta on your stove, when that pasta is done and you're ready to eat your tasty dinner, you pour it through a strainer. You could alternatively sit there and wait for all the water to be boiled off the pasta, and it's very intuitive in that example how much more energy and cost goes into the thermal approach. What you need that makes that example historically somewhat trivial until now is you need a strainer that can differentiate between those two different molecules now that you want to separate, and can do so at the temperature of conventional chemical processes and can handle the chemical environment itself. So our core technology is essentially making a molecularly sensitive chemical filter out of pencil. So that gives us broad chemical and thermal durability, and we've been focused on delivering that to our customers since we spun out of MIT about 2017. So we're a bit of the story arc there. We originally focused on application in the food and beverage space. We pivoted to serving the pulp and paper industry in 2018 because of its large industrial nature, and it has some single unit operations with tremendous carbon footprint in them. So with one application, we can go after about a quarter of a gigaton of CO2 emissions every year. And we have developed full-scale membrane modules. We've coated more than about 5 kilometers of membrane to date. We took those modules into a series of field trials in 2021 and 2022, and logged a little more than 6,000 hours running with our customers and mills across the US and Canada. So we are putting in our first commercial system later this year. That's our primary objective for our Series B. And yeah, excited to chat more about the journey.
Awesome. Thank you both. I know that everyone sitting in the audience is probably excited to take notes on what are some of the success factors and bumps and points of acceleration that you might have seen along the way to your journeys. I think you mentioned you have like 50 people working for you now, you've got about 30. So from idea to 50 and 30 people respectively, what would you say are a couple of the key success factors that you've seen? I mean, for both of these companies, it's been like 4 or 5 years be a couple things you point to, either things within your control or things that kind of happen upon you that have contributed to your success. Sir?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest ingredients is always people. So we've been incredibly fortunate in the folks we've hired, but also the sources of advice we've got along the way. I can think of folks who had a material impact on our business that range from investors who passed to people who've been at every board meeting since we started the company. So really, both our CEO and I are first-time founders, and so gathering advice and figuring out what makes the most sense for us in any particular context has really been one of our biggest advantages. And I think beyond that, to the extent you can give really general advice, is just adaptability. Like progress is not monotonic, and we definitely were incredibly naive at the start of the journey, and have learned a lot along the way. But remembering to adapt our objectives and our mission and our approach to what makes the most sense for the business and our customers has been kind of the best you can do.
I'll just pile on that entirely. It's the people. It's the people at the company that make the company, and the interactions between them and the ideas that are generated between them, and the combination of those ideas. It's also transparency about what's happening across the organization. It's ensuring that there's a good structure with respect to who's reporting to whom, who's managing whom, even in a fast-paced, flexible startup environment. And it's about accountability to oneself and to one's team members as well, and sort of rigorously tracking what you're doing and making sure that you're delivering on what you say you're going to be delivering on.
So you both mentioned people. I think primarily you were surrounding the teams that you were working with. But what about advisors, boards? Who do you tap into for advice, whether that's formal or informal? Can you say a bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So we're very fortunate at Beer. We have a fantastic board, a fantastic group of investors. We're really focused on building a community of advisors around us that have lots of experience in the exact things that we're going to be doing in 2 to 3 years' time. For example, transmission project development. None of the sort of core members of Beer really have a lot of direct experience developing transmission projects. So one of our first key board hires was someone who has decades of experience going out in the field and building transmission projects to connect renewable energy to the grid or long-distance bulk power system transmission lines. So it's just gathering, it's identifying those pieces of the puzzle that and there's a certain humility. You just have to say, okay, we don't know this, and so we're going to go out and find someone who does, and they're going to become a core part of the advisor group that's sort of helping lead the company.
Completely agree. We found communities like Greentown to be incredibly impactful. If there's an aspect of your business that's outside your wheelhouse, or you feel you really need to understand and develop an expertise in, we found that this community reaches surprisingly far in terms of the depth of experience and situations that folks, someone knows someone who knows someone kind of thing. And then the other is, that willingness to say, whether it's our customers are in a particular space or a key part of our process is in a particular industry, go to those conferences, meet people there, find, we have a phenomenal group of advisors who retired from the industry that we serve and have been, I don't know if folks have interacted with many pulp mills, but they don't get a lot of, frankly, kids showing up from MIT to revolutionize their industry very often, and having, or for very long, I would imagine, if they did show up. And so, building that rapport and those connections has been absolutely critical.
I'll just add one little one little bit to that. It's talking to peer companies like Via. Talking to folks that are in the same boat as you, or a little further ahead, or a little bit behind you, or whatever in terms of their development stage has been a huge asset for us, and we leverage our sort of sister company, through Breakthrough Energy Ventures, through the engine. We leverage those relationships to the fullest extent possible.
So on the topic of investors, can you kind of take us through the fundraising journey that you've been on? We've got folks competing for non-dilutive funding here. There's obviously loans, there's equity, there's VC debt. Can I still say that? But tell us a little bit about what the journey's been like for each of you, for your companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So non-dilutive is absolutely a huge part of particularly the early days. I think MassCC was probably our first check-in by a matter of days. Obviously, SBIR programs, and there's a ton of stuff coming out of the DOD these days. So depending on what you're working on, those sorts of things can be really impactful early on in business. Our general story, our seed round was up by the engine, and we've taken advantage of private capital where we can along the way. I don't know if anyone's been clever enough to use a loan at the very beginning, but if anybody has, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, same. Our seed round was funded by Breakthrough Energy Ventures. That was related just to prove out the sort of modeling and analytic work, or to prove out the system in a computer model. And then our Series A, we were joined by the engine and Congruent Ventures. Fundraising for us has never started with going up to a company and being like, give us money. It's always started with relationships and just sort of a slow relationship building exercise, and it grows from there. And it's also not a discrete event. I think we see fundraising as a continuous event. Everything we do at the company, in a way, is part of fundraising for us. And so yeah, it really starts with relationships.
Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what does it look like to have an ongoing relationship that leads to a fundraise, let's say? Like, where do you go to meet those folks? What does the early stage look like?
Yeah, so, you can have, a lot of interest is sort of built, there's a lot of just sort of through the grapevine type of stuff can be built. Obviously we have our board, and each of our funders is represented on the board. They are plugged into sort of the broader venture capital community, so a lot of times it's, at a conference, or they'll say that, oh, you should really check out this company. They'll say that to another VC, and then we'll get an introduction, and then that's sort of where the conversation will start. A lot of the conversations we've had with potential investors have actually started at conferences and events where we're either speaking, or we have a booth, and we're presenting our technology or our company in a booth.
Yeah, how about now? Okay. Yeah, it's absolutely a networking exercise, leveraging folks who have started companies before, or as you meet investors, particularly if they're interested in leveraging their connections as well. It's all about building those relationships. I completely agree, and I think my other biggest piece of advice for folks who are just starting their first fundraising journey is really, for lack of a better way to put it, really make sure that your pitch, your story elicits that feeling of greed. I think as a lot of folks from a technical background, we think about what we need to accomplish a goal, or what the right way to develop a technology is, and the folks that you're looking to partner with are obviously not running a non-dilutive funding organization. So really making sure to think about how does your path align with their goals is a big part of crafting the right approach.
You prompted an idea, or just something I thought I had, which is that it really is about storytelling. It's very, at least my limited experience is that a a typical investor doesn't want to necessarily just have you run through a pitch deck with the financials and show how you're going to be a great company. They want a story behind that. They want some sort of overarching narrative that, as Brent just said, sort of aligns with their mission.
So I want to explore that a little bit deeper. You talked about transmission as something that's becoming increasingly constrained. You gave sort of the background of the problem the United States is facing. And you talked about pasta. And these are two very different approaches. You're hungry. There's food back. These are two very different approaches, right, to potentially communicating what the science, what the technical challenge is all about. And I'm sure you both have like 10 other ways of describing the problem depending on who you're talking to who's in the audience. But what is the strategy here? How do you think about modulating what you say? How much time do you spend on refining that story, or what advice would you give in terms of moms? We heard 10 pitches today. I think every single one had a different take on how to really catch someone's eye and get someone excited. So take it over, you.
Sure, I'll start. So we, as I said at the outset, we are linking really everything we're doing to greenhouse gas emission reductions, and it's this is one of the most compelling sort of narratives for the types of investors that we want to attract, and frankly for the types of people that we want to attract into the company. The co-founders and everyone in the company really understands that we need a whole bunch more transmission to meet greenhouse gas emission goals. So we always link it to that particular narrative.
Maybe to answer the last part of your question first, particularly in the early days, we did a ton of iteration, experimentation, and you find what lands for a particular audience, and you get to know their perspective on your technology, and it's of course absolutely different for different types of investors, for certainly for customers and other audiences that you want to tell your story to. Unsurprisingly, you want to tell it in a very different way. I think for us, we often go for the pasta analogy because we're a cross-cutting technology. It requires a pretty technical perspective on where emissions come from, and it's never quite been in vogue in those spaces. So part of our mission is even just evangelizing and educating around the problem we're trying to tackle the way we see the climate challenge.
Okay, can I pile on again?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you keep cueing ideas in my head. But yeah, it's really know your customer and know who's going to be interacting with your technology, and really sort of parceling that out. I mean, for the power sector, we're thinking about the environmental community. We're thinking about the utility community, which cares about safety and reliability. We're thinking about state regulators and attorneys general who think about keeping costs low for ratepayers. Each of those segments and more, it requires a tweaking of your communication strategy.
Do you ever talk to people who aren't as compelled by the climate angle? And what do you do then?
Yeah, absolutely. So we emphasize different messages depending on who we're talking to. All of them are true. It's just a slightly different emphasis. And I'll take the sort of the investor-owned utility community as one example, where truly the emphasis in that community is safety and reliability. So we hammer home the fact that we're going to not only deliver a product that's going to help you achieve your climate-related pledges, but also deliver a product that is as safe and as reliable as the standard transmission lines that you're familiar with using every day.
Yeah, I would say until within the last couple of years, the climate angle would be like a footnote in how we would approach almost all audiences. Our early vision was very much about the margins you could get going after transitioning such a massive part of the economy. To these days, certainly would not lead lead a conversation with Ball Mill about the greenhouse gas emissions from their business, or even necessarily how much energy we would save them. We instead really try to understand the operational impact and where they're going to get the value in their day-to-day lives. It's, the job we're doing for them is separating these two chemicals in a more modular and lower cost way than they do it now. There is much more to it that they're going to care about initially.
Got it. So know your audience and practice a lot, it sounds like.
Pasta.
And know your pasta, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about culture and talent. So no matter how cool the tech is, you still have to get people to take a bet on spending time in, career capital with you. What has that been like for each of your companies? How easy is it to get talent in the door? What do you talk to folks about to attract them? And has that been easy or difficult for you?
So it's certainly been a challenge. Hiring has been a challenge, especially in the types of sort of some of the niche roles, the niche technical roles that we're hiring for, and we are hiring for a lot of roles. So if anyone's interested. It's been a challenge. So the way we attract talent is in large part the same way that we attract customers, which is really giving them an inside view into the culture of the company prior to onboarding them. And some of those cultural principles that we hold dear are that we're mission oriented, as I've been sort of saying, and the things around sort of transparency and interaction and collaboration. So all of those things, we have a pretty actually extensive sort of interview process that we're sort of starting to formalize now, and that's a really key part of the whole process because it allows those prospective hires, we're giving them insight into what the company's all about well before an offer letter is at the door.
We got some great early advice that I feel like we're, despite our very best efforts, still struggling to live up to, which is in the early stages in particular, it's hard to spend too much time on hiring. It's so important attracting amazing folks and convincing them to work for you because it's incredibly competitive out there. And exactly what you highlighted, being transparent and really putting the vision for the role for the company, for whatever is appropriate in that context, as you get so little time to make a first impression about how excited to change the world you are, how much they'll come with you on that journey, and it can have such an impact getting the right folks on your team.
What do you do to build culture? You're not that big yet, but both of you have a pretty clear view, I think, on what you have to offer to someone coming in the door, some principles and values that you follow. Can you talk a little about what those are, and if they've evolved over time, and how you sort of continue to instill them?
Sure. We have a core set of values. We try really hard to, I think they're only as good as your ability to reference them in conversation. It's a bit cliche, but just putting them up on the walls is not enough. Ours are about the impact and the mission we're focused on, the way we collaborate, we treat other folks on the team, and the way we challenge each other's ideas. So those are kind of some of the pillars we really try to build into the company culture. And then I think, besides hiring people who you're always very intentional about those decisions and whether or not those folks are aligned with, share those common values, is I think just, don't be afraid to take the time to invest in those sorts of things. Whether that's events with folks on your team or even just your co-founder if you're just starting out. I think it's really important that when things get challenging or you encounter a period where that you're passionate about the people you're working with, and the folks come together to solve those sorts of challenges instead of start looking for it to be someone else's problem.
Yeah, what you said, and there are a couple sort of staple institutions that we have right now that we're definitely going to grow out of. So we're actually struggling with that right now. But so we're at about 30, and one of the things we do, well, we have two things. One is every week the entire team, we have the luxury of the entire team getting together and doing sort of just a rapid fire check-in, just to sort of so that everyone's sort of on the same page about what everyone else is doing. And then we have a more in-depth monthly, all hands meeting where we all again get around the table, but it's more in-depth and we do deeper dives. That's something that has formed into something that everyone really values at the company, and it kind of bleeds into everyday life at the company in terms of our level of transparency with each other. But we're going to grow out of that, and so we need to find ways to sort of somehow replace that with something that's commensurate.
Sounds like a good problem to have,
yeah.
But something to tackle anyway, right? Okay, I got the 1 minute warning about 2 minutes ago, so we're going to say thank you to Max and Red for their time and all their stuff. And I think we're just about ready to announce winners, yeah? Awesome, thank you everyone.
Hello? All right. Can everyone hear me? And we're almost at the end of this very exciting run. Thank you so much, Xenia, Brent, and Max, for that really illuminating discussion. I don't know if many of you here know, but the Climate and Energy Prize has been around for 15 years. And in this 15-year history, in our 16th year, this was actually the most competitive cohort ever. And so I think that really came through in today's pitches. These are the best of the best. We've already got our Europe finalists in, and we're going to be hearing which of these amazing teams have made it. I think before we announce our winners, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's made this competition possible, our wonderful sponsors, Roy McKinsey, Chevron Tech Ventures, the Climate and Energy Prize team that has worked really, really hard to kind of put all of this together, our wonderful panelists, and our amazing judges who've had a really, really tough time deliberating and coming to this conclusion. And also before I announce, the US semi-finals are going to be on the 13th of April, so I encourage all of you to sign up and register for that and continue to follow our journey to the finals. All right. So I'm first going to announce the Audience Choice Award. So maybe if we can have a drum roll. All right, and the Audience Choice winners are Simon Cycle. So, like I said, we have 4 teams from Europe already in. I'm going to be announcing in no particular order the 4 teams from the US who made it. So, team number 1 is Sia Bio. Congrats, Sia Bio. Team number 2. Team number 2 is Arvin. Okay. Like I said, this was our most competitive year ever. All of the teams, I think there was a lot of appreciation. So if you've made it this far, I think it's already like a massive achievement. You're definitely going to find success. Y'all are incredible. So don't feel too bad, don't despair. There are, several amazing teams who've kind of not made it so far. And let's announce team number 3. Team number 3 is Simon Cycle. And finally, the final team to make it to the finals is Atma Leather. And with that, I invite all of you to join us over cocktails to debrief. I think we really saw something amazing today. I heard feedback. Everyone is so impressed with the quality of all of the pitches. And looking forward to catching up now over the cocktail hour. Thank you. Pictures of all of you who made it possible. So maybe first if we can take a picture with the judges.